Stand up, please, as you're able to. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from the last meeting. Any comments on the minutes? Can I have a motion to approve them? Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. And we want to have a vote on that, yes. Okay, the motion passes, of course. Next item, I guess, is a follow-up log. Item 8B, the follow-up log. Do we have that?
Oral communications, do you want to?
Oh, oral communications first, yes. Okay, how many speakers do we have?
We have six speakers.
6 speakers, so you have up to 3 minutes each with one possible time donation or 2. First speaker, and who are the first 3?
We have Chris Giles, followed by Jessica Docker, followed by Judy Burlfine.
Hello, Commission. My name is Chris Giles, and I am here to talk today to talk about speed. And this is an issue that we're facing as a city. And as we will see here shortly, that the sheriff will present a report of all the violations that they have for the month of May. And I put this together. This is not necessarily the top 5. This is probably within the top 6 or 7. The other 2 had to do with like driving without a license or something that was not related to moving violations. But the big note here is that the top violation, unsafe speed, is 376, which is a 400% jump over number 2, which was exceed 55 miles an hour. And that may be on the freeway. I'm guessing that could be freeway violations. But then below that, failed to stop for stop signs, which when you look at the explanation, it's encroaching into the crosswalk. And then prohibited use of handheld device while driving, distracted driving. And then the last thing is signal lights circular red, which is stopping again at the line before going into a crosswalk at a red light. So thankfully we've ramped up traffic enforcement recently, and we are seeing positive results. The numbers of violations being cited have increased. But to paraphrase what Commissioner Gross had said in a conversation with Sheriff, that we could stand out there all day, every day, and issue tickets for speeding and still not get everyone. And that's probably the truth. While increased police enforcement is a valuable component of traffic safety, it can't be the full weight of addressing the rise in pedestrian and cyclist deaths. As the sheriffs can probably attest, manual enforcement alone is neither scalable or sustainable. Commissioner Gross has introduced the idea of automated enforcement with the cameras, speed cameras, red light cameras, and also license plate readers. And I think if we truly care about saving lives and reducing the number of people speeding, automated enforcement is a central part to our solution and not just an afterthought. Can you pull up the second? So this is a short summary of different areas in the U.S. who have employed traffic cameras. This is just a sampling. There's more, and I can provide citations if you need them. But what you see here is that they are definitely effective in reducing speeding, fatalities, and serious injuries. Thank you.
Next, we have Jessica Docker and Judy Burlfine and Christine Schindler next.
Hi, my name is Jessica Dasher, and I'm here tonight to support the Chalakian family, where they're celebrating the life of the beloved daughter and sister, and to encourage our community to take actionable steps towards making our streets safer in honor of Emory. I frequently hear discussions about making Encinitas safer for bicyclists and pedestrians. How if we continue to tolerate the red light running and reckless speeding, we will never get there. I have never seen so many drivers running red lights before. It's become shockingly common, and I've lived in far more urban areas than Encinitas. I've lived in Cleveland and San Francisco and metropolitan Washington area. Tragically, too many lives have already been lost, and now Bridget and John are facing every parent's worst nightmare, and it's utterly heartbreaking. I urge you to declare a state of emergency to enable immediate and substantial progress in making our streets safer. I want to see a swift and significant increase in police presence. From my point of view, I don't really see all these stops that are going on. I rarely feel like I see police presence on our streets. I'd like to see a lot of tickets, and if red light cameras are the answer, I'd like to see those too. Everyone should know that Encinitas prioritizes safety. If you speed, if you endanger our kids, you'll be ticketed. Additionally, it makes sense to delay or increase the delay of walk signals during this crisis. Signs should only indicate that it's safe to walk after any possibility of cars entering the intersection has passed, even if this means the traffic has to wait for longer for pedestrians to cross. Perhaps more traffic-only and all-way pedestrian crossing periods, like we have in downtown Encinitas, should also be considered, as well as additional blinking lights and signage wherever possible. I have a sophomore at SDA and a fifth grader at Parkdale, and I shouldn't have to explain to my kids why they shouldn't be the first ones in the intersection, that they need to wait until every single car has stopped before walking, or that need to wait 10 steps away from the curb before crossing. This situation is unacceptable. We are experiencing an overwhelming amount of new development along with an influx of cars, so it's essential to step up traffic safety measures. My kids walk and bike, and next year one will be driving these streets. How can we continue along this path? The dangers on our roads will only worsen, and we will surely lose more children. Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm reiterating quite a bit of what they just said, so I'll try and shorten this. As you know, we've had 4 deaths this year, 3 pedestrians and 1 cyclist. As the previous speakers have said, it's due to running red lights, due to cars speeding, and thankfully, our city council has added 2 law enforcement officers, and I applaud them for that. And I saw 2 of them on El Camino Real the other day giving tickets, and that is good. But as Chris said, they can't be everywhere all the time. We have almost 200 miles of roads in Encinitas. We need to augment their work. Now, I've heard people talk about automated enforcement here and in city council, and I think there's a little confusion about what it means. There are 3 kinds of automated enforcement. Chris talked about it, but it's important to be clear what the city council approves of and doesn't approve of and not jump to any conclusions. License plate readers, we already have them in Encinitas. Our mayor is supportive of them. So no blanket statements about the mayor being against automated enforcement. Red light cameras, we had those several years ago. While there were objections, it's premature to close the door on a promising option. perhaps new technology offers improvements that makes them more suitable for us currently. And lastly, speed cameras. California Assembly Bill 645 allows 6 cities to pilot speed camera programs. Cameras photograph vehicles exceeding the speed limit and issue citations. So let's figure out how we can join this pilot program. Most people drive safely. A few repeatedly run red lights and speed far beyond the limit. And we need to better understand what those speeding events are and take action in those locations. So here are 2 ideas on how we can do that. We can set up electronic monitoring in key locations. That's what they did on Quail Gardens Drive. And guess what? They found out people were driving 80 to 90 miles per hour on that street. With 2 new stop signs and a roundabout, the street is considerably more tame these days. And much of these data have already been collected, and they're in the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan that was narrowly approved by this body here. Let's encourage the City Council to agendize the Safety Action Plan so we can make use of the data that's already been collected and that can help us out. We know that speeding and running red lights is dangerous. We don't need a study to confirm that. So let's help out law enforcement in all ways possible. It's unfair to put this burden entirely on their shoulders.
Whoa, that's yellow. Be bright, be seen. So Christine Schindler, I live in East Encinitas. So first off, just a moment to recognize Emory and what's happening right now in parallel to this meeting. So just a few things. We'll see if I get through them all. Sharrows, useful tool, good tool in the toolbox. So if it isn't coming to you soon, it will be, but Sharrows on San Alejo Avenue and Manchester Avenue, we had a great plan. We were moving forward. The previous Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission supported it, actually wanted to add additional Sharrows through the S-curve. And then it went to council, and then it got derailed. So I'm going to ask council to move forward with the main batch of Sharrows that would be very useful along that roadway. So I'm talking like Glen Park, San Alejo, through the S-curve, Manchester Avenue where the K-rail is. It's widely frequented by cars and bikes, and Sharrows would be quite helpful. So I hope that you'll support us in that request. Quick build roundabouts. So we have someone here that will probably talk about roundabouts, that they aren't safe. Roundabouts are safe and good and move and have many benefits and slow people down and help our environment. And there's a lot of good uses for them. And we have a very good low-cost, quicker build one on Quail Gardens. And I'm creating a list of roundabouts in other areas. So I'll provide that list to you down the road shortly. And hopefully you'll, in the future, support additional roundabouts in our community. Santa Fe Drive. The western phase is half-baked. It was paused to take a look at it, and the intersections are undone. They're very unsafe because of the pause to observe. Just venting here, I guess, because you can't do anything about it. But perhaps you'll be involved in pushing forward the eastern phase. The eastern phase is much different than the western. That's not understood by a lot of people, but it essentially will give us sidewalks where no sidewalks exist. Will probably give us better buffered bike lanes, and maybe, if we're lucky, will give us a quick build roundabout as well. Encinitas Bike Walk. I'm a part of that group. Occasionally we do walk and bike, community bike rides. We have one coming up at the end of June. I hope you'll join us. I also encourage you to come to a city cycling class, 3rd and 4th Saturdays. Thank you for your service.
Next, we have Natalie Satoon, followed by Lisa Provenzano.
Hi, Natalie Satoon, Cardiff. Actually, I'm so glad, Jill, you're here today. I owe you an apology. And I wanted to discuss something really quickly on lane sizes, but I also want to thank the Sheriff's Department because I don't know if you all know this, the Sheriff's Department has been enforcing all of our municipal codes, and the city attorney's office has not been prosecuting any of them. So as of this year, we have 182 municipal codes that the Sheriff's Department has written, and we've fallen short on. So thank you for continuing to do that, even though we're not holding up our end of the bargain. So, but what I have is this on Santa Fe. I live on Santa Fe, and I need to apologize to Jill because of the 10-foot lanes. So the way that 10-foot lanes are actually measured are from the middle of the, say you take the stripe, the middle of the stripe in the very center, all the way to the top of the curb. That's considered a lane. So all of these reflectors are actually where our tires are riding over. So when we suggest a 10-foot lane is appropriate, that's what we're getting. So we actually have, in this case, the bioswale has a pitch, so it's not completely vertical on these curbs. So when you measure 10 feet, it actually is from the center of the middle division to the top. So unfortunately, we lose about 1.5 inches because of the pitch of the curb, since the curb goes in. So my concern is that cyclists, and if you are a cyclist and we have a bike lane on the side of a 10-foot lane, that somebody is going to avoid driving on this. I see it all day long. I live on this street. All day long, people utilize the median, or they venture into part of the parking spaces. So when we are so excited about these lane diets and 10-foot lanes, unfortunately, what you're going to get are people not maintaining a lane because they don't want to hit the reflectors. So please keep that in mind. Some roads might be perfect for this. Unfortunately, Santa Fe is a disaster. So I don't want to hit a cyclist. I don't want to hit somebody next to me. I don't want to hit a car, but that's the reality of a 10-foot lane. So Jill, if you wouldn't mind to send me the code where you did that, because someone questioned me about the way that you all measure, I would love to be able to forward that on to them. Thank you.
Good evening, Commission and staff and law enforcement. My name's Lisa Provenzano. I live on Quail Gardens Drive, but tonight I'm going to start with Santa Fe. When I went to look at it, I saw this on two different sides. Was this the lane that was supposed to be the emergency lane for the fire trucks? Because there's a hospital straight down there, and there's a fire station north, just north. Next one. So when you back into the space, and you have to pull forward a little bit, the person behind you, we all know, is close, but they see what you're doing. The person behind them, who I observed while I was taking these pictures, got mad and just zoomed around that person. When you're back in, you come to the end. You can't walk behind your car. So picture that they're all full. So the next one. So that's what's behind your car. If there's no one next to you, or if you can get through there, you have to go up, I think someone said that's 11.5 inches. Walk across there. When you step down, you're stepping down into the bike lane. and then you're crossing the bike lane, than to get up on a sidewalk. So the streets, that side is horrible for pedestrians. Okay, and then the next one? What happened here? I mean, you have a bike lane, and this goes up on the sidewalk, and the first time I drove by it, it was trash day, and the trash cans were all out in the little area the pedestrians could work in. Next one. That's just a nicer shot of it. And is that the last one, I think, maybe? Yeah. So if you can't go around the back of your car, then you have to come out and you're in traffic. Someone with a wheelchair said, you know, I can't do that. I have to go out and then go down till he can get a driveway. I can't believe this whole setup is ADA compliant. Maybe it is, but I just don't know how someone walking with a walker, I'm not saying they drove in, they could have been a passenger, can do that. And the school is right there, so there's no give. Like she said, the lanes are too small. Those little planters come out, and that cuts down the size of the lane. Plus, someone going in a wheelchair would come out of the space and have to be in that lane. So, not so great there.
Amanda, is that all of the public speakers?
Yes. Excuse me.
Great. Next on the agenda are special presentations, proclamations, and so forth. First of all, Mobility Manager Nick Bugg will give us a report.
All right, thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, and members of the public. I'm Nick Buck, the city's mobility manager. That is not me in the picture, but I certainly remember that feeling. That's just a reminder that school's out. Most kids are out of school by this week, and let's all be safe on our Encinitas roadways. With the kids out on their summer break, the neighborhoods will be bustling with excited kids enjoying their time off. And to ensure everyone's safety, let's all be extra careful on our roads. Okay. Just want to inform about a few things coming up. In the month of June, we take a few MOUs to City Council. Those are MOUs for our bike safety education for the 25-26 school year, Encinitas Union School District, and for San Diego Union High School District. Those MOUs cover things like in-person bike classes, assemblies, webinars, all those sort of things to educate our students about the importance of bike safety and to give them practice on the bike. Sorry, going back to, and for the Crossing Guard program, that's a program that the city's had in place for a few years now, and that helps cover the cost of crossing guards at identified spots around Encinitas schools, keeping those crosswalks safe. And just want to, in case anyone didn't catch the May 28th proclamation that the council proclaimed Encinitas as Bike Safety Awareness Month. Some highlights for that proclamation include that the city promotes safe and responsible use of shared roadways, paths, and trails, and continues to expand cycling and road infrastructure. That the city partners with its schools and local organizations to promote bike safety education. The city promotes a Vision Zero program with the goal of eliminating traffic deaths and serious injuries. And the proclamation also celebrated Encinitas having its annual Ciclovia event on May 18th. And just a note that that's an award-winning event recognized by the California Parks and Recreation Society for a standout event. So that's what I have for this month. Open to any questions.
Are there any questions from council?
Yes, I do. I have a question. Mr. Buffett, thanks for that. Thanks for that presentation. I have a question. I was lucky enough to get some information that was distributed at La Costa Canyon High School, and I know I've asked you a couple of times just about the coordination between the city of Carlsbad and our school district, San Diego Union, and I'm wondering if it looks to be. I've got several items that were distributed, including some bike lube as well, which I'm sure you're familiar with. But you're able to coordinate with the city and the administration of La Costa Canyon, obviously with SDA and the other schools in the district, but La Costa Canyon as well.
Yeah, going into the 25-26 school year, while the MOU is specific to to providing programs at our Encinitas schools, it is coordinated with the district. So when we do those educational offerings, the schools within the district are informed and able to attend those on campuses in Encinitas. So those opportunities are available for all, and also the monthly classes that we offer on the 3rd and 4th Saturdays of the month, those are open to anyone, in Encinitas and beyond, so that's always the resources available as well.
Excellent. And I'm wondering, is there somewhere either on the website or in this information that suggests safe or safer roads for the kids to get to campus? Is that something that would, coordinate with Safe Routes to School and through the state and the district?
Yeah, that's a good question. Currently, there's nothing that the city has available that suggests like safe routes or the best route options for students attending schools. It is something that is being discussed and evaluated. It could potentially be directed as work. That being said, the Encinitas Bike Walk group has kind of started to work on that similar sort of thing. So definitely our local advocates that support us, are taking a look at that as well. So we'll see if we're given direction and if we go that way with providing those routes. So to be continued on that.
Excellent, yeah. And I think possibly the beginning of each school year, maybe you could have a volunteer, a ride leader, or somebody, maybe the first week or so, and get the kids, especially the younger kids, that are just starting middle school or that are going to start to ride. That might be something that would clear the minds of the parents and kind of reduce the anxiety of the kids riding. I don't know if that's a possibility.
Yeah, cool idea. We'll certainly always look to, to best engage with our schools, and if that's something that the schools have an appetite for, certainly we can look to support something like that. And then also mention that at the elementary school grades, our Encinitas Bike Walk group for years now has done Bike on Wednesday, Walk on Wednesday, BOW WOW, kind of fun acronym there. But that's to encourage people to get to school by bike or foot and to have, great people involved in supporting that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Buck, do you know if the data, even if it's anecdotal, on whether or not biking and walking is up or down year over year for kids in school?
That's a good question. I don't have any data to compare year over year, but it's something I can look into and come back with.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. And then just speaking with Emery's parents, I know they said specifically at their school a lot of fear among kids, of course, walking and biking now. And the principal was trying to work on that. Have we worked on that as a city with that school at all, and for the kids that are really scared about getting around?
No, we haven't worked on anything with that school or any of the Encinitas schools directly. It's something that we can certainly get together on. Certainly that's a real concern and a fear. And so any way that we can support our schools, obviously they're kind of out for summer for the most part, but as we circle back on the school year and start putting together our educational opportunities, that might be something that we, kind of specifically target and perhaps put some programs in place to help with that, kind of fear and warm people up, or at least, emphasize the safety and to make people feel better about, getting to school on bike or foot.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the members of the committee? Oh, okay. Next item is the sheriff's report on enforcement from Sergeant Christy Trampus.
Good evening. Once again, my name is Sergeant Christy Trampus. I'm the traffic sergeant at the Encinitas station. So we did it a little bit different. I know last month you were looking for a breakdown of the tickets. So the first slide is just showing the number of tickets. This does not include parking tickets, so there's an additional 187 parking tickets that were written in May on top of the 280 notice to appears. Obviously, as you can see, the number of DUIs doubled from April to May, so we had a lot more DUI arrests. And if you scroll down, accidents actually went down in the month of May, which is good. There was only 15 reported. So I know it's really hard to see the next slide. I don't know, can you zoom in and make that bigger? So we tried to break down the citations because you were asking, out of the total number of citations, how many are, speeding tickets, how many are red light, all that. So thank you for doing my job earlier. You got up here and explained that obviously the number one thing that we're citing for in this city is speed, along with red lights, stop sign violations. Those are some of the top ones. Our report writing system is we're working on it, but it's a little confusing because as you see, there's, 4000A1 was expired registration and it'll show a certain number, but then farther down, you'll see more citations for that same vehicle code, but only because that vehicle code was cited with something else. So it's a little confusing, but it does show that the top tickets that are being written are for speed, red lights, stop sign violations, stuff like that. So that's a little bit of a breakdown. And then the last slide, and sorry, stop me if I'm going too fast, is once again the map showing where our accidents are versus where the deputies are out writing citations. So they're trying to get out and write tickets where we're having most of our collisions, trying to be proactive in those intersections where, people are running red lights and causing those accidents. So that is that slide. Any questions on the slides?
I had one. Do we have any data on whether or not the number of accidents and serious accidents, fatalities, has it trended up or down over the last couple of years?
Over the last couple years, I don't know, but I can look into that and get back to you next month.
Okay.
So you want like the last couple years?
Not the last 5 years, something like that, to understand, if we're seeing more serious accidents and fatalities this year than we have had in the past, and it would be nice to just understand that. Thank you.
Okay.
Just to follow up on that a little bit, the seasonality really affects things, right? People, vacations and all that kind of stuff. The first couple slides are great, kind of to that point, but could we see them by month, but compared to May this year to May last year?
Yes, and I actually had a slide. We had that done today, but it was too late to include in this. So next month we will have that. We figured out how to do that. So next month I will have that for you.
Yeah, that creates a little
Yes.
bit more of an apples to apples look, because it's crazy how weird the same months are
Right.
different each year. and
Yeah,
all that.
next month we'll have that for you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sergeant Trampus, can you speak to the discrepancy between the accident total here on a month and then the accident total we see in that first slide?
I think that's for the entire year, not just the month. I think that's what that number is.
Weird that it says monthly total.
I know. I know, I saw that earlier, but I'll confirm that. But I know so the ticket numbers on the breakdown is for the entire year, not just the month. So that's also something I probably should have mentioned that. Just showing that for the entire year, obviously, the majority of the tickets that are being written are for speed. That is the top ticket that we're writing out there. Because I know that is one of the biggest concerns is speed, and that is the most of what we're writing tickets for.
Yeah, and so on the citation there at 178, we had 376 citations for speed just in May?
No, that was for the year.
Okay, that's year.
Yeah.
So that's citations monthly, accidents annual.
Correct.
Okay.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And then on just the investigations on the four, so on the, we can speak to the traffic deaths, 4 traffic deaths so far this year is, well above anything we've seen.
Well, kind of. I mean, if it's going at some sort of rate throughout the year, but I'm guessing, and it's terrible to talk about fatalities like this, but I'm guessing they don't happen sort of at some sort of linear rate. So it'd be nice to go back and understand a little bit whether things have really changed and, based on the data.
Yep. So any updates on the just criminal investigations or investigations in general to the 4 vulnerable road deaths we've had this year?
Yeah. So they are all still actively under investigation. One just got submitted to the DA's office for review. I can tell you a little bit about each one. Obviously, I can't tell you a lot because they are still under investigation, but the 4 that happened this year, because you were wanting details last month, so I'll give you as much as I can. The one in January 1st with the elderly woman versus the bicyclist. Unfortunately, that one is almost done with the investigation. The elderly woman who tragically fell into the traffic lane, I believe it was January 19th. And then tragically got run over after she fell. That one, they are still actively trying to pursue the driver of that collision. And then, of course, we had the elderly gentleman who unfortunately collided with a family member while parking. And that one has been sent off to the DA for their review. And then, unfortunately, Emery's tragic incident. So they are still all in the active investigation stage. So we try to get those done as quickly as possible, but as also as thoroughly as possible. And they do take time to get these done. So like I said, they are still all being investigated. So I can't give a lot of details, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Sergeant Trampus. And, I know you're also new, so thank you for getting up to speed so quickly.
Any other comments?
Yeah, thank you. Sergeant Trampus, thank you for your report. I'm wondering if, I know that you were in another city or town just recently, and I'm wondering either your former position or a position before that, you had experience with automated traffic, whether it was red light or speeding automation. Have you had any experience with that?
No, I did most of my career and all of my traffic experience in San Marcos, and we didn't have any of that when I was there.
And in your opinion, just from what we know, do you think that would help your team and help with enforcement?
That's a hard answer because I've never worked with it or experienced it or seen the result of how it works. So I can't really give an answer to that. I appreciate the citizens getting up and understanding that we are doing everything we can do as enforcement. And I appreciate them saying that, they would like to help in any other way possible. And I appreciate you guys considering that. I don't have a hard answer of what would be a great tool for that to be. I've never worked with it, so I can't really say whether that would be a good idea or not. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson here. I like your report that shows cumulative for a while. That because the data for 1 month is kind of scattered, but this shows things are happening. How many motor officers do we have on the street now?
4.
4. How many do we have authorized?
4.
Just 4.
Well, we have one in the academy right now, so
So eventually we'll have at least 5.
we'll have 4. We have one in the academy right now, so we'll have 4.
One of the 4 is in the academy, okay.
Yeah.
And I noticed the uptick in DUIs in May. I don't know if that's the May 5th holiday or just stronger enforcement, but
We have, I don't know about the holiday, but I know we have been doing more enforcement. Last meeting, we did mention that we get grant money from the Office of Traffic Safety, and we did have some deputies out strictly looking for DUIs last month. So, and then I know they got some arrests during that time. So I know we've been doing more enforcement.
okay. And I'd like to encourage everyone who's in the audience or live or listening to this tape to realize that we can reduce the number of citations by observing the speed limits carefully and being more careful at driving. We don't need to have any fatalities. We do not want to have fatalities. And so if everyone drives safely and at the speed limit or below, even if you're leading a parade, you're likely to make it harder to increase the number of citations, and that's good.
No, we want that, yes. We don't want any fatalities. Obviously, we have the zero vision like the city, and we are trying to increase the enforcement. We've got, and I know you mentioned last month you were asking me for the strike team info where our motor deputies get together. We are redirecting some of our resources with our cops deputies, our detectives, and we're going to be doing some more enforcement starting this month. And there will be a day, I'm not going to say when, but there will be a day where you see deputies in black and whites and motor deputies all over the city. So we're trying to show more presence and make it a point to the citizens or people visiting that don't live here that if you're going to come to this city that you're likely to get pulled over if you're speeding, running red lights, driving drunk, whatever it is. We're trying to get the word out there and show presence and write more tickets and get more enforcement out there. So starting this month, we're putting that together, and we've got a couple dates for the next several months where you're going to see that.
Okay. I'd like to thank the Sheriff Department for their diligent work. Keep it up and do better even.
We'll try.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the action item 7A, Highway Safety Improvement Program, Cycle 12 Acceptance, continued from the May 12th meeting. Do we have a presentation on that?
Yes, good evening, Chair, Abe Bandigan, City Traffic Engineer. This item, as you mentioned, was continued from our last meeting. Before I start, again, I do want to provide some clarification on what this item is and why we are here. We did receive feedback from one of our residents that at the last meeting, this item was not clear enough, and my presentation and the information I provided to the commissioners was not easy to to understand or comprehend, or that was the reason that the commissioners didn't get to provide proper recommendation to staff. So luckily, this was a continued item. So I'll spend like 2-3 minutes clarifying why we're here tonight, and then go over these 4 projects. Well, I guess potential projects. There is this program called Highway Safety Improvement Program, short HSIP, and every year, it's a federal program. Every year, every other year, a certain budget is allocated, is passed to each state, and then State of California has this program established every other year. They provide the guidelines for the grant, how cities can apply to get a portion of this grant. The grant is 100% based on safety. It's not what you like to see in the city, what the city can benefit from. It's just based on collision history in the city. Now, it's unfortunate because if you do not have a injury or fatality or a severe injury, you will not be able to apply for the grants and get a good score. You can apply, I guess, but you will not get a good score and compete against other cities. The way the grant works is you provide a potential project, and then the collision history associated with that location that your project is at, and then there are defined countermeasures on the state program that says, I want to build a sidewalk, I want to build a bike lane, I want to convert an existing bike lane to protected bike lane. I want to add a traffic signal, I want to add a crosswalk. There are multiple different countermeasures, and your projects have to somehow correlate with the collisions that have happened. And then based on the expenses associated with your proposed project and the number of injuries and fatalities and collisions that you had, state ranks the projects. That being said, we usually try to go at it backwards. We do not look for projects and then see how much they score, because it's a lot of times a lot of energy and effort into those, and then they will not score well. What we usually do is we go find the collision history that qualifies, it gets a good score from the state, and then try to find projects that can sit at that location and cover those issues that we had. So that's usually the way HSIP works, because otherwise we will not score well. If we just find a project that we like and there's no collision history there, it will not score, so we would not even be able to apply for it. So that being said, we did find these 4 projects that we thought, based on the history of HSIP cycles, would have a good shot at winning, because we kind of anticipate how well our projects score, and based on previous cycles, we knew how much they would get. And then we brought these to the city council. When we applied for these projects, there were discussions at that point. Obviously, these are just concepts at that point. They're just one paragraph. There's no design, there's no engineering work on them. City council blessed submitting the application. So these projects were reviewed by the city council, their ideas. We submitted, luckily we won all 4 of those. Now after, this was the first, I think no other city, like we for sure in Encinitas never had this situation to win all 4 grants. During the submittal process and then after we won it, our city council has changed. As you know, we had new members at our Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission. We usually do not bring these back after we win, because these were blessed by the council. This time, for the first time, we are bringing a recently won grant to the commission to pick up your brains again, and then we're taking them to city council, because the majority of the members are new at the city council, to provide them information on this grant that was blessed by the previous council. This is why we're here tonight. We want you to see what the potential ideas, what the projects that we applied for is, and then you can give us ideas. Okay, well, for this grant, we like to see this happen. We do not like to see this happen. If this happens, it would be great. Can you go see if we can add this element to the design, or we can remove this piece from the design? And these are 4 totally separate projects. They're not connected to each other. Each can be handled individually. You can say, we like this one, we absolutely don't like this one. So when I go over the projects, for each one we can stop, you can provide your input, and then you can make a motion or recommendation on each individual project, and then we can go to the next one, or we can just track your recommendations for each individual one and then make a motion at the end. With that being said, before I start, is there any questions about why we're here tonight and what this item is? Okay. So the 4 projects, the first one, the grant is about $1,900,000. Oh, and for all these grants, the city's match is only 10%. So this one, the idea in the grant was to create a protected bicycle facility, again, due to the collision history that we had on Encinitas Boulevard. This is from Cali Magdalena all the way to Via Cantabria. When we applied for this, this was about lane narrowing only, traffic calming, and buffering, making the bike buffers wider and adding bollards in the buffers to enhance our bicycle safety. However, because we heard from the commission and from the council the past several months that there is interest in enhancing capacity as well, improving flow of traffic, we do have the opportunity of using this grant to add additional travel lanes, not everywhere along the corridor, but again, because this is not a design at this time, this is an idea. We think we have the opportunity of adding additional travel lanes, a 3rd lane per se in a good length of the corridor. We also have the opportunity of adding right turn pockets at signals, at intersections. For example, at the entrance to St. John's School, we have the opportunity of adding additional left turn pockets where we have the capacity, where we don't have the capacity, we think we can benefit from additional capacity at left turn pockets. We have that opportunity while still adding a few elements of protection for our bike lanes to cover the requirements of the grant. We cannot totally deviate from the grant, but there is some flexibility with regards to first addressing the safety element that was in the grant, but then adding additional components that we think Commission and Council and our residents would like. With that said, I said this is just, these are the 7 cross sections that you see are alternatives, they're possibilities. Many of them, as you can see, are showing a 3rd lane on Encinitas Boulevard that doesn't exist. Some of them show new pockets. But then again, you are not approving these cross sections tonight. You don't need to dive deep into each individual cross section and tell us we like this specific cross section, we do not like this specific. You can just tell us, hey, we like the idea of adding additional lanes. We do not like adding the additional lanes because it can cause other safety concerns. We do like the protected bike lane option. We do like only the additional pockets option. So we are here to basically do a very quick brainstorming session. So when we're going to council, we can tell council, I will obviously mention the same story, but then I will provide your motion, your recommendation to council too. I'll stop here for this first project. Let me know if you have any questions. And then again, we can discuss your recommendations, your ideas on this one. We can make a motion and second here for this specific recommendation, or we can just gather them and talk about them in the end.
Abe, last time we talked about this, it sounded like the vertical elements for the protected bike lane, that's a hard and fast requirement in order to get the grant?
The bollards, yes.
So in order to proceed, you have to have bollards in this traffic solution. Is that right?
Not 100% of the length of the corridor, but at a minimum, we need to have it in a few areas to justify this protected facility is like, because the grant is funding a protected bikeway, so we have to.
Sure. And there would be bollards. Would there also be wheel stops as well, or just bollards?
We don't need to. Again, we haven't designed anything, but we can address the grant requirement just by adding bollards.
I think in the last meeting there was a suggestion for an alternate
audible strapping.
Did you make any headway on that?
I am working on it.
Okay.
I've contacted a few different entities to see what options we have with regards to that. If it's considered a protected.
Okay, thanks.
Excuse me, Chair. Do you want to check and see if any of the public speakers are specific to this item? I have 4 public speakers on on this item?
Very good point. Yeah, if we have a speaker, because we're kind of breaking into four different pieces, if we have a speaker that wants to specifically talk about this individual grant, I think it's a good idea to hear it now, if chair obviously allows.
Anyone? Any of my 4 public speakers? You do want to speak? Okay. Anyone else? Christine? Okay. And then,
And Amanda, please clarify that if they use their 3 minutes on this specific item, they wouldn't. If they want to talk about multiple, it might be a good idea to leave it in the end.
yeah. So would anyone like to speak just on this item or just general? Okay, so you want to wait until the end, maybe? Okay. Does anyone want to speak on this project only? No. Okay.
We're just going to comment on this. I have a comment.
Okay.
Chair, I have a comment. Thanks, Abe. I just have a general question. When you widen the road, say you add another lane from 2 to 3, in your experience, does that increase the speed on that road?
If I wanted to guess here, I would say the effect of adding a third lane on increased speed would be higher than the effect of, because we have to do lane narrow, we have to narrow down lanes, and there will be more friction and pretty much going down to 10-footer lanes all the way. The extra friction obviously does slow traffic down, but because of the fact that we will be reducing congestion by a lot, the level of service will go a lot higher, a lot better because of the extra number of lanes and the increased capacity. The flow would be a lot better. If I wanted to guess, I would guess this would lead to increased speed. We will increase friction, but I think it would increase, like the balance would be to the higher speed.
Oh, okay, thanks. And I also have I suppose it's a general question on wheel stops. And we've had experience with those as well. And Coast Highways, the major topic. Would you say that adding wheel stops, where you suggest you do the data and you add those wheel stops, and we've got St. John's School there, and the kids going to Oak Crest as well. Do you think that adding wheel stops would help with safety, in particular, kids riding to school? Do you think that would be helpful?
Absolutely. The one reason that I'm a little hesitant with mentioning the wheel stops and also the quantity and I guess the density of the bollard usage is the fact that we don't yet know what the fate of this third lane or these additional pockets would be. If in my perfect world, if I keep it at 2 lanes, I will have a very, very wide bike lane and a very good buffer where this wheel stop or bollards, no matter what the density is, will not hurt anyone. We will be looking at a 8-footer bike lane with a 6-footer buffer, 7-footer buffer, where you have like a 10-footer, 12-footer unimpeded area for riding a bicycle, because we have a very wide footprint. On Encinitas Boulevard, the 2-way left turn lane right now is like 18, 20 feet. If I shrink it down to 11, 12, and the lanes go to 11, we'll have a super wide bike lane which can be used. However, if we go for the third lane, we would have to shrink everything, and we have very, very limited right-of-way. If I end up with a 5-footer, 6-footer bike lane and a 2-footer buffer, I'd be really hesitant with adding a wheel stop, because we're really narrowing down the area that a bicyclist can ride on. So the bollard, okay, it has a 4-inch width, 5-inch width, it can still be there, but a wheel stop would make it really tough on the bicyclist. So I wouldn't recommend, if we're going for a 3-lane option, I wouldn't really recommend using a wheel stop, as beneficial as it might be.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments?
There's one thing you just said, Abe, but I guess I would take issue with. I think that the wheel blocks do involve danger that the flexi-posts don't. Because if you hit a wheel block with your head, what a lot of people have done down South Beach, for example, then that's obviously a problem that you don't have the same thing with a flexi-post. It's a totally different kind of impact. But a flexi-post has danger as well for a bicyclist. If a bicyclist is going almost, really, you don't have to have any speed because if your head is going to drop 6 feet down to the ground, then you're going to have an injury, a pretty serious injury. So and a flexi-post will knock down a bicyclist very quickly at any speed. So I would take issue with saying it doesn't. But I think that there's another issue you brought up, which is, it's kind of difficult because with all of these, it's not just with this one, but there's multiple variants that you have, and then within those multiple options. So it's kind of difficult to dissect everything out, and they all have an impact on one another. But with the additional lanes, I think that, to me, it doesn't sound to me like additional lanes are desirable. You would increase the speed and you'd have less space for the cyclists on either side. I don't think we need additional speed on Encinitas Boulevard. It moves pretty quickly as it is. And if the third lane wouldn't increase capacity, I don't see the advantage with that. I think the right turn lanes sound desirable to me. If you can put pocket lanes into the intersections you mentioned, that seems to me like it would be desirable. But I would personally be opposed to any of the separated bike lanes that you're proposing. And that's a problem since the grants is coupled to those. I don't see the data, and I've reviewed a lot of the studies that have to do with separated bike lanes that claim that there are 53% less fatalities, less accidents, less crashes. But they're not supported by the data they're referring to. And I've looked at it very carefully, and I think somebody's going to speak to that tonight here. And that's coming after these discussions. It would have been better if it would have been the beginning. So I'm going to be opposing the separated bike lanes. And I guess that means I'm opposed to this whole grant, but that's unfortunate.
So to see if we can find a common ground, so you think if we do not go for a third lane and we have a 7-footer, 8-footer bike lane and we have a 6-footer buffer and there is a bollard 3-4 feet into the buffer, a bicyclist may go 4 feet into the buffer, drifting away from a super wide 7-8-footer bike lane, 4 foot into the buffer, hit a bollard and fall down, and it would still be the fault of the bollard.
No, if you can do that, I would definitely be interested in that because I think that's safe. If it may be safe. It's a little bit of a problem in the downhill, but I do think that if the bollards are separated far enough and you have that kind of buffer, then I think we have something to talk about for sure.
Because again, because of the width that we have on Encinitas Boulevard, if third lane is not implemented, there is a good chance in a lot of areas we'll have a possibility of, I guess we can discuss some sort of a threshold that commission is supportive of and again, if your idea is supported by the rest of the commission, we will like to see only bollards implemented in buffers wider than 4 feet or 5 feet or bike lanes wider than 7 feet or something like that. If it's at 6'2", we do not like to see a bollard on a 2-footer buffer if it's a 6-footer bike lane. But if the bike lane is 7 or higher, some sort of a clarifying.
I'm very much in agreement with what you're saying. I think it's a visual cue that the flexi-posts have some value. But we don't need as many as we see in some places where they've been installed. So if we have that approach and it's a wide buffer, as you're saying, then I'd probably be on board with that.
Okay. No, I heard your idea. And again, Chair, this is what we're like. Commission's recommendation could be: Commission likes to see additional pockets. Commission does not like to see narrow buffers. Commission does like to see protection implemented only if the buffers are wide. Some sort of a recommendation to this scale, and then we can pass this to council when we present this to the council. We're not approving or any project or any design or anything.
Yeah, if I can just weigh in on, do you want to, I'll go quick. Okay, sorry. So just to summarize, some of the data on this road, because we've had 2 tragic deaths on this road this year. So I just want to be clear that whatever we're advising here, I think we have to be very sensitive to what's happened on the road this year, right? It sounds like both criminal investigations are still open, but as far as we know, a bicyclist was hit by a driver on January 1st, and then Emery's death in April. So just some data on this, right? So pedestrian and bike deaths averages, both in California and national averages, right? Often they're either called pedestrian and bicycle deaths or vulnerable road users, are VRUs. The U.S. average on 100,000 residents is 2 deaths a year, 2.1. California is higher, most likely because we have a culture of walking and biking more than the rest of the U.S. California is at 3.1 vulnerable road deaths on 100,000 people, if you average that over the last 15 years. Encinitas' population is 60,000, right? So a little bit more than, if you have to extrapolate that to 100,000 residents. We have 2 deaths on this road this year so far. I think someone spoke that Encinitas has 200 miles of roads. So we have a very, very dangerous road. And I just want to be mindful of talking about adding lanes or doing anything that might speed things up. And just because I had an opportunity to talk to Emery's parents, and this is not, them telling me about what happened and where the body ended up versus where the body started. This is a horrific thing that happened on a road because people are going way too fast. So when we talk about adding lanes to deal with circulation, I just want to be so careful that we're at a historic moment on this road in terms of just how much of an outlier it is from a danger perspective. So anything that we can do with the grant money, anything we can do as a commission to try to remember the people that have died on this road, to make sure that doesn't happen again. We know there's schools around this road. I don't have answers here. I'm just saying when I hear man, maybe let's add 2 more lanes, I don't know if we want more cars going through this road. I realize people have to get some places, but there are still vulnerable road users around this road. There's children around this road. Whatever we can do to make sure these things don't happen again, I think we have to commit to that. So thank you.
All right. Abe, is there any stats, or maybe this even has to do with the speeding citations from, Ballard down to Quail Gardens roughly going west? That's downhill, right? So cars go faster downhill. Are there more citations given on downhill areas like that? And if that's the case, that would seem to be, or just in general, cars are going to go faster. Has there consideration or any of these 3 to 2 lane considerations based on that downhill side versus the uphill side? And the downhill side being where cars would go faster because they're going downhill.
The first part of your question with regards to enforcement efforts, we rarely are involved. We sometimes request from our traffic sergeant and our sheriff's office to do some targeted enforcement based on the data collections that we have or based on input we receive from our residents, but we rarely are involved in asking our deputies where to go and where to enforce. Is pretty much 99% of the time their decision and their judgment. With regards to the second part of the question, we do have modelings that show the level of service and the volume on the road in horizon years with the future development in the city. And the route, I guess I could have mentioned, the route of this idea of adding a 3rd lane was the concerns that we heard loud and clear from council at a few meetings with regards to the failing level of service on Encinitas Boulevard in the future years. One part I think is already in the failing area, but 2 or 3 segments will be in the level of service F based on the future development in the city and with the current capacity. That was what council at that point expressed concern with. So we just didn't add the 3rd lane just to increase the speed. The goal was to satisfy that concern that we heard from the city council. Now, again, based on commission's input, council might change its position and say, and again, don't get me wrong, this was not a full-on direction, the majority of council voting. This was a message we heard from the council with regards to the level of service on Encinitas Boulevard. But with these turn pockets, it can definitely address flow of traffic and do a lot of good and enhancement for the flow of traffic, even without adding a third lane. So maybe these turn pockets can help council with, liking the enhanced flow a lot more with this project. But that was the root of this idea of potentially adding a third lane.
So, but no specific objective of trying to slow downhill traffic?
Not really, no. With the 10-footer lane, it would definitely slow down because we have wider lanes in the down. Like we had one fatality over there, right, I guess, across St. John was last year, I think, where I think it was an Uber driver turning left out of a apartment complex over there. It was downhill and the lanes are wide and the speed was high. However, it does meet the standards right now. We have the opportunity of narrowing lanes down to create more friction and slow traffic. So with or without without a third lane, we will, I think it's a good idea to do the lane narrowing to do a little bit of a slowdown on the road.
Yeah, that'd be my only consideration, or not only, but my main one would be just with that strategic intent to slow traffic on downhill. Even if that means more narrow lanes on the downhill side than on the uphill side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
I guess just a comment, and maybe folks will disagree with this, but faster traffic is definitely makes pedestrian accidents more severe. I don't think you can argue with that. But I think people also need to keep in mind when you increase congestion, and Encinitas is becoming more congested, there is the tendency for drivers to violate traffic laws more frequently. People get frustrated. There are certain parts of Encinitas where there's a lot of congestion, and you see people violate traffic laws. They turn on reds, which is bad, but I think as we're talking about slowing down traffic and maybe not worrying so much about congestion, I think people need to understand that congestion makes drivers frustrated, and frustrated drivers do thoughtless things. And so it's something else to think about as we're sort of mulling all these different options before us.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on the stretch of Encinitas Boulevard between Westlake and Calle Magdalena. There's a section where on the north side of Encinitas Boulevard that is unimproved right now. It doesn't have sidewalks or curbs. There's the proposed development of the Moonlight Apartments at the Planning Commission. They had proposed running a sidewalk through their property rather than widening Encinitas Boulevard at that point. And I'd like to understand what the status of that project is, because they've cleared the brush, but they've not done any grading, and it's awfully slow.
If I'm not mistaken, you're talking about between Westlake and the Smart and Final signal, correct?
What?
Between Westlake and the Smart and Final signal?
Between on the north side of the street, between the intersection of Quail Gardens Drive and Westlake, down to the vicinity of Calle Magdalena or Saxony.
Correct. So
there's an unimproved area on the north of the street that's set for development, and that will increase the traffic volume there.
Correct.
As I heard the Planning Commission hearing, the applicant was proposing to run the sidewalk pedestrian traffic through their site. I don't know what the status of that proposal is.
they will be improving the road to its ultimate condition, which is sidewalks, and the additional lane will be added. So they will be adding a third lane on the north side of the road. And they will also
that had not been in their proposal, but that's a sensible thing to do.
They are doing it.
Okay.
They are doing it. And they're also improving the signal at the Smart and Final entrance. So there will be crossing at all four legs at the driveway. Current signal will be upgraded.
Improving a T to a crisscross with an increase in traffic may not be an improvement. However, that area is going to be subject to a lot of stuff. Also, Encinitas Boulevard there has a fair amount of truck traffic. And it seems like from the freeway to El Camino Real, this is a route that a lot of trucks travel. And 10-foot lanes with trucks on them are kind of frightening. You might, 10 and a half feet might be better.
That's correct. Usually our outer lanes are wider. Whenever we did the same at El Camino, where all of our truck routes, the outer lanes are usually 11. Usually we try to keep it at 11, but if we cannot afford 11, we go 10 and a half. But I think on El Camino we have 11s.
Yeah. Anyway, I'd suggest that any improvements in that stretch of Encinitas Boulevard include whatever that Moonlight apartment development is going to do. Or if indeed it's just suspended.
I can give you more information, but last I heard, that development is doing improvements between Westlake/Quail Gardens intersection and the Smart and Final signal. Everything on the north leg is on the developer. They're widening, they're adding the third lane, they're adding the sidewalk, and they're building the signal. Everything is on them, and they're doing it. But I can't.
They will be doing it. They're not doing it right now.
Yeah, they're in the process before their entitlement.
Okay.
Before their occupancy, sorry.
Yeah, that's going to increase the traffic count on Encinitas Boulevard, of course. And those are my comments.
Okay, so do we want to make a motion on this, a specific one? You want to go all the way to the end and make a motion on all of them combined?
Do you want to take them individually?
Yeah.
Or do we want to rank them?
I mean, I don't know how it procedurally works, but I think it's fine without actually making a motion to agree on what your motion will be on this one, and then we can gather them all and then make a motion all the way to the end. But I just don't want to pass this item before making sure commissioners kind of agree on what they like and don't like, or want me to say on their behalf to council. Like,
okay.
I'm hearing it seems like the third lane is not preferred, if not disliked. You go ahead. Yeah, I'm just trying to facilitate.
Before we make a motion, can I ask one question? Because I wasn't clear to me, you may have answered it already, but 3 lanes versus 2, what difference will we see in capacity? Because you said the city council said that's important, it would be important to me too, and I'm curious.
We can't hear them. You need your microphone on.
Oh, sorry. I was wondering if you could explain what you think the difference in capacity will be for Encinitas Boulevard with 3 lanes versus 2, so that we can sort of factor that into what we think we ought to be proposing.
Well, the capacity of the road by adding 50% to the number of travel lanes would be at a minimum about 30%. So usually when you add it, like the more number of lanes you have, the capacity increase is less. Like you convert from 1 lane in each direction to 2 lane in each direction, you usually add about 10,000 vehicles per day to capacity. When you go from 2 to 3, it's usually about like 7,000, 8,000. So definitely a major capacity enhancement. How much of it we need, how much, again, the balancing of congestion relief versus speed buildup, and then the additional conflict that will be introduced to the road, all the driveways on the sides, when people want to turn left, now instead of crossing 2 lanes of traffic, getting to the 2-way left turn lane, for a left turn, now they have to cross 3 lanes of traffic. So we are introducing additional risk to all those left turns. So it's a balancing thing. But again, because of the fact that we did hear about this flow of traffic concern from council, we did think about adding this option in here. And then again, this is the time to, express your concern. And we'll pass it to the council that this is what we heard from commission.
Yeah, comment there is that there's a bottleneck at I-5 because Encinitas Boulevard is only 2 lanes in each direction. There's traffic turning onto the freeway and coming from the freeway, but that's a definite regular bottleneck, especially rush hour. And I guess to improve that might involve a flyover overpass, which is way out of our budget.
Excuse me, Chair. I have concerns from the public that they want their concerns heard before we make a motion. So
Yeah, well, let's have some public comments then.
would you like me to note what you're thinking? And then we go through each one, and then we can hear public comments, and then at the end, we can make a final recommendation to council? Does that sound?
Yeah, I guess at the
yeah.
end, we're going to have to rank these 4 proposals some way. So we may have all the public comments at the end, if that's acceptable with the public.
I mean, since we don't have that many speakers, I mean, Jill might know, I think procedurally you're allowed to allow a speaker to speak twice. So if
Okay. Well,
if
let's
we
have
don't
the
have that
public
many
speakers on
speakers,
this then.
right, Jill, do you know if I think chair can allow.
Okay.
So if you want to hear from a resident on this specific item now before discussing this specific item, and then the resident can come back at the next project and express. I mean, you're the boss, chair. You can.
Sure, that sounds reasonable. Let's do it.
Okay. Does anyone want to speak on Encinitas Boulevard? 3, okay, great. We'll start with Molly Hintlian with a time donation by Debbie Schaefer, and then Steve Linke and Christine Schindler.
Good afternoon, Molly Hintlian, District 2. And commissioners, you have a tough job. And this is especially probably heartbreaking because we have such high deaths recently. And everyone wants to have a solution. And I think, with due respect, these grants were applied with limited or minimal resident feedback. I'd like to request significant community outreach participation in each of these proposed grants. Each of these projects affect a different area of the city and affect our citizens differently. I happen to live right off of Encinitas Boulevard, and as you know, we're having 1,100 units built. Our traffic is gonna just be something we don't even know yet. Sunshine Gardens is only maybe halfway done. They're working pretty fast. Commissioner Johnson, you just brought up the Moonlight Apartments and the provisions for them to make modifications to the street. So we can't even possibly look at a grant for Encinitas Boulevard without looking at the big picture and all these other moving parts, or we're gonna have another Santa Fe Drive where it didn't work. And I'm sorry, I will speak to each of these projects at a different time, but I'll speak to Encinitas Boulevard that we're having road rage issues. I was victim of road rage 2 weeks ago and had my life threatened when I tried to back in 3 different times on Santa Fe Drive. And I'm a good driver. And it was very scary. And the guy was out to have me. And I was in my Audi. I wasn't in an oversized vehicle. I used my directionals. And I fear that a lot of our traffic calming is causing the opposite effect. People are stuck at a light for a long time. They sit through 3 lights at the Smart and Final to get onto the 5 freeway. And they're angry. They're in a hurry. And they're distracted. They're looking at their phones. I have an older car, so I don't have the PlayStation module of, the map in front of you, but I think that's also an issue, that people are looking at their dashboard and not peripherally at a bicyclist, at a pedestrian. And today, I was headed to Trader Joe's, and I was going maybe 35, and it wasn't crowded, school's out, and this guy wanted to run that red light at Belore, just barreled. I stopped at the yellow, but he went for it. I don't know what's causing it, but all I can say is anecdotally, we do need to address it, but I don't think we can address any of these grants without involving the citizens in each of these areas. And today especially, I'm sure Emery and many of the family members affected would be here expressing their opinion, but I don't think it's productive. I think we need to have active community participation and break each one of these grants down because they're complex. There's so many different, I can't speak to, are the bollards better than the wheel stops? What kind of crosswalks? Because we don't know what the development's gonna do. And just last week, Planning Commission passed with approval the Santa Fe subdivision. That's gonna be 51 units with their main egress right there on Santa Fe Drive, and they're gonna have to move the bus stop. So we haven't even figured out Santa Fe Drive, and we have a whole new development that might take 2 years to build, might take a year, I don't know. But we have so many moving parts. I applaud you that we have these grants, but I don't know if there's a simple solution that the commission can say it's this, this, and this, a checklist. I think it's gonna take a breakdown of the citizens and the experts, our traffic engineering, to really look at these scenarios, but also look at the cumulative effect and impact that we're gonna have on Encinitas Boulevard with 1,100 more units. Thank you.
Good evening, Commission. Steve Linke, former Carlsbad Traffic Commissioner. First, I'd say congratulations on getting all these grants. That's awesome that you're able to do that. Specifically on Encinitas Boulevard, I hadn't planned on talking on this tonight, but I just took some notes. As far as the separated bicycle lane bollards, I'm going to give a presentation later describing some large concerns about those and how the intent is to improve safety, but they don't necessarily do that. So I'd encourage your traffic engineer and you to look into the audible edge lines or whatever they're called as an alternative to the more higher vertical elements. Wheel stops came up. There is marketing from the Federal Highway Administration and NACDO that I wrote a letter to you about that makes the marketing claim that separated bicycle lanes reduce crashes by 53%, which, as I'll go into in my presentation later, I don't think is supportable. But that same study showed that when you add things like wheel stops, it actually increases the crashes. So the conclusion of that study was a 53% reduction with just bollards, but that reduction goes down to like 35% or something if you add additional elements like wheel stops. So if you believe that study, which I don't think you necessarily should, but if you do, then you shouldn't be adding anything more. The third lane, I've been on the Traffic Commission, or was on the Carlsbad Traffic Commission for 4 years, and we went through lots of these things where development would come in, add a bunch of traffic. You do a traffic study. You do a before and after and a horizon year, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And if Encinitas Boulevard is going to reach level of service F with these new developments, I don't think there's any choice but to add the lanes. Otherwise, you are going to get, level of service F is like crawling along at 10 miles an hour on the freeway, and your residents just aren't going to be able to deal with that. The city council is not going to be able to deal with that. So I don't know that there's any choice, but to add that third lane, given the developments that are coming, or you will get road rage. Another thing I'll end with is speed is important. Obviously, you want to keep people under the speed limit or at the speed limit. But I think a more important aspect is distracted driving. So if you're going 50 miles an hour and you can reduce their speed to 45 miles an hour, you're not going to save a life by that 5 miles an hour. What you're going to save a life by is not having them be frustrated or distracted. They need to be focused on the road. Thanks.
So Christine Schindler, East Encinitas. So thank you for taking our comments along the way. Appreciate that. Appreciate the effort of staff to work to get these grants and to work through the interesting process with our council right now in bringing it back to the Mobility Commission. As a avid driver, well, reluctant driver, avid bicyclist, avid pedestrian along this corridor, this is what I would like to see. I think we have a car problem. I think we have a car driver problem. So whatever we can do to make this corridor safer for all road users, I think is what we need to focus on. So thinking about increasing capacity and adding a third lane, I think that just increases the problem. You just fill up that third lane and you still have issues. So we need to focus on shifting some people out of their cars to improve the corridor. So going eastbound, there's a section right now that's awesome because it has a really wide buffered bike lane. And then there are other sections that are not so great. But I mean, I actually ride this corridor a heck of a lot more now in the last, say, 2 years than I ever did. And it's getting a lot more use by students. So I would say no to a third lane. I'd say yes to right turn pockets, particularly at the St. John's. I appreciate the last speaker using separated instead of protected, because you're a vulnerable road user, you're never protected. So I would say bollards, yes, because they're required for the grant. However, I wouldn't place them too close together, especially on the downhill westbound side, or the westbound. On the eastbound or south, I don't know, south side, we have a large stretch where there are no driveways, and that would be the only place that I would say we could use wheel stops to have a fully separated facility. But I think wide buffers and some vertical separation is the way to go. Speeding. I mean, we don't want to do anything that's going to encourage more speeding. Driver frustration. I mean, I don't think we should reduce to the lowest denominator. We need people to have responsibility, take responsibility for making our streets safer. Thank you.
Our last speaker on this project is Lisa Provenzano.
Hi, I'm Lisa Provenzano. I live on Quail Gardens Drive. There's been such a big problem, I don't know when I first noticed it, with the timing of the lights. I asked Abe about it. The city does have control of the timing of the lights, except right on either side of the freeway. This is what I understand. Why should it take me 10 minutes, 9 or 10 minutes, to get from where the botanical gardens are, where I live, to the freeway? There's no reason. The timing of the lights, there's no flow at all. You didn't even need to do the calming because it's calm because of the number of cars. And I can't, where would you add that other lane? that thing is so crowded, you have the in and out line going, onto Encinitas Boulevard in that lane, going towards the freeway. So can we fix what we can fix, like the timing, the photo enforced lights? If you get a citation for one of the red photo and light enforced lights, it's $100 to $490. That's before you pay for traffic school if you don't want the point on your insurance. I guess if you get the point on your insurance, you're paying more insurance. Money means something to most of the people. So if we could do that, it would pay for itself. I don't know what the distribution of, if any, goes to the law enforcement or the city. I don't know how that money goes. But not only running the red lights, but if you don't come to a stop before you make a right on a red light, you also get ticketed. That would make a big difference. And what Molly said, every single day since I drive down Encinitas Boulevard, there is always someone who's trying to make that light, and it's definitely not making that light. If you come from the 5 freeway, you're going east, you're going left onto Quail Gardens Drive, where there's going to be 1,044 more units. The 4 cars can go through that arrow. The 5th car always goes, sometimes yellow, sometimes red. The 6th car often goes, and that's definite red. So that is right down the street from 3 high schools, Sunset, Pacific, and SDA. And then we have that great roundabout, which I guess was cost effective, where the kids are getting, I mentioned it before, get air off of the roundabout. The fire trucks and the school buses have to go over it. So no more on Encinitas.
That's the speakers. I would suggest that we go on and discuss each of the other 3 and then rank them.
These 4 projects are not competing against each other, so we don't necessarily need
We
to
don't
rank.
have to rank them.
These 4, they're standalone projects. The goal is to just provide commission's input on these potential projects and on these ideas to council when I present it to council in August. It's basically saying, we presented this to commission. I will send the same message to council. These are grants that we won. Previous council blessed them. These are the ideas associated with them. We can do these things with each grant. And then this is commission's recommendation or idea on this. And to the whole community outreach, again, we are at a we're not even at the start. We're a little bit behind the start. After this gets to a design point, we have a consultant, we start the design work, there will be community meetings, this will come back to the commission for design review. So there are a lot of steps. This is nowhere near where you provide your approval or recommendation for approval to council.
Okay, acknowledged. So perhaps we should vote on this. Is there a motion?
Well, I was going to ask, what if Abe have you been keeping a list of all the feedback? Maybe we can because you're looking for a motion that sort of incorporates all the feedback that we've heard so far.
Again, you can correct me. Amanda is taking notes. What I heard, again, you can correct me. What I heard is that seems like the 3rd lane, I didn't hear any commissioners support the 3rd lane idea. I did hear concerns over using bollards over narrow lanes and narrow buffers. I did hear the support for turn pockets. I think the majority supported the idea of traffic calming via narrow lanes. So these are what I heard. And if you like, Amanda can put together a motion based on these.
I have a question, if I may. I was moved by what you said about the increased capacity, Abe, and also what the former traffic commissioner from Carlsbad echoed that same thing. And I'm hearing from you that the city council, I didn't hear that myself, but you're saying the city council was concerned about that. And I'm listening to all of that, and so I would change my mind about the two necessarily being 2 lanes. But if we're going to have additional lanes, then it's going to bring into conflict with the wide bicycle lanes. Are we going to be able to accommodate both?
I doubt it. If we add a 3rd lane, one option would be to do some sort of a mixed cross, again, because we have different cross sections, and we're only, I think, failing at 1 or 2 of these. It can be that because we can still satisfy the needs of the grant by doing protected separated bikeways in like half of the corridor. It doesn't need to be 100% of the length of the corridor. So we do 3rd lane where we absolutely need it and don't do 3rd lanes in other segments. Even in those failing segments, just adding a right turn pocket would drastically enhance flow of traffic. So we can maybe pass this to council that, hey, we did hear your concern, but we're adding a secondary left turn pocket. We're adding a right turn pocket at Ballure, for example. We're adding a right turn pocket at St. John, and that would help with the throughput of traffic a lot because the right turn is obviously now getting out of the through lane. So we don't necessarily need to add the 3rd lane to help with the flow of traffic. The turn pockets can also help a lot with that. So it's a combination.
Well, I think I would be prioritizing the 3rd lane after what I've heard. But I obviously feel strongly about the separated bike lanes versus Class 2 cycle lanes. But perhaps if we restricted the number of bollards to a minimum, it might be possible if they were kept in the middle of the segments where there was no intersection, since they're much more of a problem where there's an intersection. And maybe that could be worked out.
Absolutely, and then that's a matter of design review. When we have the design that shows the location of the bollards, we bring back the design to you. There will be presentations showing the design, and that would be where Commission provides a more detailed input with regards to the design.
Is there a time limit for use of the funds or decisions to all this? You know, I heard from one of the comments that there's a lot here, right? And there's different segments, different areas have different needs. I agree, the worst traffic happens, whether it be rush hour or whatever, right by the freeway. And so these homes that are going to be built, multi-unit housing from, Quail Gardens west is probably going to be where you're going to see the most consistent new traffic created. Can we not back off and trying to make these decisions on this timeline that we're hearing and be a little more thoughtful with the consideration of at least that zone there? Maybe that zone needs to be looked at differently because it is a very different segment of our town than it is from west of there. And to do something like that so that we can address that issue with that dense housing going in. Because to this point, this is going to be a 50, 60, 70-year decision. Why are we rushing it in a couple of months?
We do have until, I believe, about October, if I'm not mistaken, to accept the grant. We have 2 years after with the possibility of a 1-year extension for design. So there is a 3-year window until we accept the grant to finish the design, and then we have, I believe, 5 years to construct. So the window is a pretty good window. And again, all the community meetings that we require, all the design review, 1 session, 2 sessions, multiple sessions with the design team and the commission and even council to that matter, it can happen during that 3-year window that we have for design. Again, we're not approving anything. We're not building anything. We're not finalizing a decision. I guess one reason that this is becoming a little confusing is that we're going a little bit above and beyond what is our standard practice. Like on a regular day, we would hire a consultant and then we'll be here with a concept drawing. We would have at that point a community meeting already conducted. Residents will know about this. There will be a design for you to review, and then we will be, going over the design. Right now, this is just an idea based on a 2-paragraph.
Yeah, I guess the issue to me seems to be more about what is the objective of all of this? Is the objective to speed up and improve traffic flow? Is it to add bike safety and pedestrian safety? Because those are two very different things with different ways of achieving each.
Absolutely. No, we're kind of trying to do both. The grant, as I mentioned earlier, the sole purpose of the grant is improved safety. Because of the collision history that we had a bicycle fatality here. I think we had another injury here. The grant was coded toward a separated bikeway, but because we wanted to address other concerns that we heard from council, we are adding this additional element to satisfy two separate needs that are somehow maybe seem conflicting each other, even because the third lane can increase the speed. But because we're addressing a safety somewhere else with that separation, we can have both, I guess, in the grant.
Yeah, okay. More reason, I think, just to, if we have until October to accept it, which I don't know why we wouldn't accept it, you know. Take as much time as we need to accept it, figuring out what the parameter of that acceptance is going to be. I just don't think it's prudent to kind of rush into something. And you're hearing our comments, but again, I'm not hearing alignment on kind of what the overall objective is. If the grant's objective and purpose is to 100% improve safety of bicycles, then that traffic congestion that we're dealing with that may or may not benefit, but that shouldn't be on the table then, right?
The separated bikeway, you mean?
No, the traffic. If we're hearing about the homes being developed here and the added traffic flow that's going to be here. You know, we can do things with the bike lanes to try to make it safer for people to bike with all of that congestion coming. But you're also saying, though, if we add lanes, which, again, I don't fully understand the grant parameters, but if we're trying to improve traffic flow, which is what we're not trying to do then with this grant money, I guess that might be part of helping clarify how we can use this money in this area.
The grant money requires us to create that separation. When we create that separation, the rest of the road is for us to design something on. The grant wouldn't mind if we narrow down the lanes or add a third lane or add a left turn pocket or add a right turn pocket, as long as we satisfy the safety component of the grant, which is that separation. So all we need to agree on right now is that we're open to creating full segment, half segment, partial corridor separated bikeway, and then we can go forward with design that may include a third lane, may include additional pockets, may include narrower lanes, may include a third lane in only one segment of the corridor. The piece that is in the grant that we have to satisfy is that separation, the density, how many ballers we're using. Are we using ballers? Are we using wheel stops? Are we using both? All of that is open during the design process. We can tackle those.
Okay.
So we're going to get another shot at this later on. Is that right? I mean,
multiple
shots.
There will be at least two sessions. I mean, usually based on the design this complicated. I can see commission seeing the design twice. There will be one or two community meetings during the process, but all these would be during the design process after council says, we want you to start doing this, basically.
Okay, I'm just going to throw a straw dog out for in terms of emotion, and then I'll see if anybody actually likes it. So the motion would be basically, and I don't know how to phrase this properly, but the commission is basically saying we like turn pockets, we like narrow lanes. Narrowing the lanes we're okay with. We are think that the sections of the Encinitas Boulevard near the freeway should require more study and special treatment because we're concerned about congestion there. And then also the idea of we're not comfortable with, and maybe this is the controversial one, we don't like bollards with narrow buffers. So if we have to put bollards in, then we would really want an adequate buffer. And Ron, I'm not sure exactly what that is, but maybe at this point, just we're saying no narrow buffer. A narrow buffer with bollards is unacceptable. So, and then I don't think we need to add the active community participation. Sounds like that's something that is going to happen in any case, but maybe we can throw that in as well. So that's my motion, and we'll see what people say.
Can you address the third lane versus 2?
Oh, that's right. And then I would also support the third lane. And I so move.
Second.
Okay.
Was that enough, Amanda?
So can I repeat? Yeah? Can I repeat it?
Sure.
The motion is to recommend a third lane, turn pockets, and narrow lanes, and that the section near the freeway would require more study and special treatment due to congestion. Do not recommend bollards with narrow buffers.
And support the third lane.
Yeah. And then, I'm sorry, the second came from,
Commissioner
Okay.
Maddock.
So it's been moved and seconded. Can we vote on it now?
I think because it's one single item, she keeps tracking and then add all the recommendations together, and then you'll make one motion in the end for all of them.
Okay. And do remember that we've got a lot of people sitting here, and we don't want to send them to bed at midnight.
Yeah, I am worried about that too.
Next item?
Well, we have three more left. Something that we definitely have to discuss tonight is the work plan, because our joint meeting is next week, Amanda, or no, it's the week after. It's the following week. But we don't have any other commission meetings. Maybe procedurally, it's a good time, because the roundabout uniform signage, that can be discussed in August, I guess.
Okay.
Maybe we can move 7B, continue to a future date certain. Well, I guess we can discuss it after this item is done. Okay, going quickly to the second project. I'll try to be a little quicker, but I doubt that I can. This one, again, similarly, collision history due to the tragic fatality that we had here 2 years ago, intersection of Santa Fe and El Camino Real. City Council directed the staff to design and implement a protected intersection at this location. A certain funding was provided. Some concepts were designed, and we parallel applied for this grant, and we were able to secure about $500,000 here. Approximate, the numbers that I'm mentioning are all approximate, but it's about that. And these different alternatives all have protected intersection element in there. Some of them with modifying the layout of the intersection with regards to the number of lanes, northbound, southbound. There is one alternative that does not change the capacity of El Camino Real, doesn't modify, well, I guess they all do affect the capacity because of the different width of the lanes, but the number of lanes are not changing with one of the alternatives. This is one of the alternatives. As you can see, we have cross bikes on both sides. Oh, I'm sorry. This is alternative one. We have two cross bikes on both sides, both north leg and south leg, crossing over the south leg. This is Santa Fe. Left is north. This alternative includes the right turn pocket. We have two southbound lanes now, and the northbound is still 3 lanes. The layout on Santa Fe is unchanged. We still have 2 lefts and 1 right, and then 1 receiving lane on Santa Fe. This second alternative here, as you can see, includes road diet. El Camino in both sides is now 2 lanes. So the crossing distance for the bicyclists and pedestrians is drastically lowered in this alternative. Capacity is affected. Still enough for the volume of traffic that currently flowing on El Camino. So there will not be major congestion here. This can handle the capacity, handle the volume, but this includes a road diet element. As you can see from the right and left of the picture, goes from 3 lanes to 2 lanes. and then goes back to 3 lanes after the crossing. Same alternative here. Instead of having crossings on both sides, this one only have crossing on the south side. The advantage is this one has minimal impact on the southbound and the southbound right turn because there's no crossing on this side. So there will be a better flow. We still have the road diet element here. And this has both cross sections, but with 3 lanes on the northbound side, with a cross bike in both directions. And the advantage on this one is we didn't change the layout of the intersection, but we added a secondary entry to Santa Fe. One concern that we received from residents was that a lot of times vehicles going northbound left turn and southbound right turn, because they were going into a single lane, because currently there's only one single lane here, it caused a lot of congestion. Southbound right turn especially would block the northbound left turn, and vehicles would end up in the middle of the intersection because they couldn't get into Santa Fe. So this design would help with an additional secondary westbound left turn entering Santa Fe. The right turn will enter this lane and the left turn will enter this lane. So this helps a lot with the flow of traffic. There are cross sections for each, but I think these are better illustration. This basically is the one that has the least impact on the capacity of the intersection, because we're not really changing the number of lanes. They are existing. We have a drop lane here. Southbound has a 3rd lane when you turn right. You do not need to go into the flow of the 2 southbound through lanes. They have their own lanes. A vehicle is slowly turning right. They have enough time to speed up and merge into the travel lane. So this is a staff recommended option because, again, it's not impacting the capacity of the intersection. In a way, it's helping with the flow because of the secondary lane on Santa Fe, and it's also providing a protected intersection that was in the grant and also required by City Council direction. I'm open to question, Chair, on this one.
I guess the same question about the bollards. Are there bollards in the run up to the intersection there required, or?
Correct. This is also a separated bikeway project and separate intersection. However, here the bike lanes are pretty wide and the buffers are pretty wide. So if that's the concern, I do believe we're looking at like 4 or 5 footer buffers and 7, 8 footer bike lanes here. With like a 12, 13 footer
and
total.
Are they required safety elements in this one as well, or?
It is in the title is still separated bikeway.
Thank you.
In the interest of time here, can we hear from the public speakers before we start discussing this? Have we had enough clarification? Are there any public speakers on this?
On the specific item for, this is still 7A. This is Santa Fe and El Camino. So that's what you mean, Glenn, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So if anyone has specific comments on Santa Fe and El Camino, and just a reminder, we have a full agenda, so 2. We have Christine Schindler and then Judy Burlfine.
So just super quick, I'm amazed that nothing's happened at this intersection. So part of this is I'm just so sorely disappointed. It still has crappy pavement. It still has a faded crosswalk. We had a fatality. We had a bike emergency. I appreciate staff. I support staff, but this one for me is just really drives me crazy. However, based on, I'm happy they got a grant. I'm happy they went through the design process for protected intersection. I don't really have a strong preference. I ride this intersection all the time. And we need more left turn options, and this gives us more left turn options for bike riders in a very busy, wide roadway. So I want to see El Camino Real transformed, but that's a whole nother subject. So I just want this to proceed quickly because we've been waiting 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to mention that when I spoke with the mayor, he said that the first project that should have been done on Santa Fe was this project to make this intersection safer. So I'm glad to know that we have his support. And the way that you make an intersection safer is you narrow the space that the pedestrian or the cyclist has to be in conflict with the vehicles. So the best option, as far as I can tell, is for 2 minutes, we narrow it down to 2 lanes instead of 3, because then I, as a cyclist or pedestrian, am not facing the cars across 3 lanes. I only have to cross 2 lanes. It immediately opens up into 3 lanes after you've gone through the signal, so it's not like we're choking it off permanently. And I think we need crosswalks all 3 ways, because people want to cross ways that are convenient, and if we only put the crosswalks in certain places, they're going to cross where it's not safe. Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Any more speakers on this?
Do I have a speaker slip for you?
You don't? Okay, I'll do one afterwards. Sean Wallace, Encinitas resident. The second alternative of the junction. Yeah, I just want to give you my perspective, what I see it. I'm a cyclist and a driver. Okay, yeah, that one will do. So certainly for cyclists coming from the right to the left along, is that Manchester still at that point, or El Camino Real, I think it is, trying to do the left. That's a tricky turn, especially as it's uphill. Several lanes of fast-moving traffic to cross. The way that I've told my wife to do it when she's not with me is to just go through the junction, as this enables, and then cross as a pedestrian. So I think that is the obvious way for cyclists to be able to do that, who aren't comfortable with looking back and clearing 3 lanes. The concern, though, that I have with, I think, all these designs I have right in front of me, is let's look at what it now does for the cyclists who are heading south on El Camino Real. They are now to the right of right-turning vehicles. You've done it also, cyclists going eastbound on Santa Fe Drive. They are pushed to the right of right-turning vehicles. This causes conflicts. The California Vehicle Code says somewhere that drivers, I believe it says, must merge to the right before they turn right. And so we shouldn't be fighting that. That's there for a reason. That's there to protect cyclists. And so I see that as a flaw with this design. Yes, it solved the one problem, but this has introduced 2 more. The southbound on El Camino Real, that's also a downhill. So those cyclists are going quite fast. And so that leaves, they're coming into that green section with quite a lot of speed. I'm not quite sure what they do there. Thank you.
Any more speakers?
That's all. Oh.
I'll be very brief. I just want to follow up on that last comment. I share the same concern that you're having bicyclists to the right of right-turning vehicles. Protected bike lanes are pretty common, I think, in many European countries, but they tend to be in areas where there are probably more bicyclists than there are cars. In Amsterdam, places like that. It's a new concept here, so people are going to be very unfamiliar, I think, with protected intersections. So I would just proceed with caution. Thanks.
Is that it? Okay, we close that part. Now, commissioners, do you have any questions or clarifications you need?
I have a question for Abe. Abe, can we satisfy the safe part of this HSIP grant with the islands, with the medians that are proposed here alone? So that I'm concerned about the right hook possibility on the southbound cyclists with this situation with vehicles to their left. And so I think that this protected area that you're calling protected is going to be a problem. Can we get the safe? Can we qualify as a safe grant with those medians?
Yes.
Excellent.
As long as we have the protected bikeway in there the intersection protection doesn't need to be protected. Or separated, again, I don't want to complicate things.
I don't understand what that difference is. So you're saying median.
The
in middle.
grant is a protected, separated bikeway.
Right.
So the purpose, the safety element that was coded in the grant was to convert the bike lane to a protected bikeway, to a separated bikeway by adding the bollards. When this gets to the intersection, we added this element to the protected facility. Now, this component doesn't need to be with exact detail of what you're seeing in the picture, as long as we satisfied the separated bikeway element of the grant, we're good with that regard.
Because
So
the
design
concern
of-
is the right turn for the bicyclists. I guess the concern is the bicyclists southbound going straight through the intersection with cars turning right. Is that the concern that I heard from?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That's the general, not to use a proper word, I guess predicament would not be a good word, but generally with the protected intersection, that's something that happens.
Yeah.
The idea is that because of the protection, first of all, bicyclists are sitting a lot further than they are in a regular right turn, so the driver would see them a lot easier. Their crossing distance is shortened with the protected intersection, and it's a lot slower for a vehicle turning right because of the fact that we're sharpening their turning. If you compare this to a regular intersection, the turning radius is a lot tighter, so a vehicle will not be able to make that easy 20-mile-an-hour turn, right turn, at a protected intersection like
They're forced to slow down.
because you're forcing, first of all, a bicyclist is here where a vehicle gets to the intersection if they're turning right.
Yeah.
And then the second is that because of the tighter right turn that they have, they'll be a little slower. But that's a given. It is a concern with all protected intersections.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's just the nature of the beast with this type of arrangement. You know,
Exactly.
your serious cyclists are going to stay left of the right turn lane and flow through the intersection with traffic, right? It's the kids and younger ones that we're worried about that are going to be in the green lanes. So,
Correct.
Yeah, it's, okay. I just wanted clarity on that.
Okay, Commissioner Johnson here. Can I squeeze in a comment? Of the four alternatives, I prefer alternative 2 because it drops a lane on each direction on El Camino Real. And El Camino Real tends to be quite a speedway. I think reducing the number of lanes on El Camino Real will calm the traffic, and then using that space for some landscaping and really good bicycle coverage would be the best alternative.
Are we voting on the different options? We got 4 options. I like option 4 myself. How do you
Again,
wanna-
to clarify, I don't want commission to feel the necessity to vote on any of these alternatives. You can say, we like the idea of the road diet, we like the idea of dropping the number of lanes to 2, we like the idea of only doing separated bikeway, do not doing the protected intersection. Again, reminding that council has directed us to do a protected intersection, albeit this was the previous council, but it is a direction that's currently on the engineering staff to design and present to council. You can say, we do like the idea of having crossings in both sides of the intersection. No, we only like the south side crossing, minimal impeding flow of traffic. The second one would impede traffic even more. You do not need to exactly vote, because again, even these are not actual designs. These are just concepts. So engineering drawing might change things. So you don't need to, again, rank or prioritize a specific alternative. It would be good if you have a preferred, all of you, but if you have different preferences, it doesn't need to be a specific alternative.
Yeah, I would like to see a solution to this this year rather than year after next.
We would have to accept the grant and then start designing.
Yes.
I think, Abe, on one issue that I have, on top of the so-called protected bicycle lane on the far right, anytime we put those raised curbs, which I assume that's what those are, that becomes a potential crash hazard in and of itself, as well as the flexi-posts that were proposed in one of the other options. I'm looking just at option 1. But the other thing that I'm looking at is this is a downhill section on El Camino Real, so cars and bicycles are going to be going quickly. And the through traffic for the bicycles, you haven't depicted a lane here, but the bicycles that are through traffic are going to have to be crossing a conflict area with the right turn cars to get over to the far right side where there should be a bicycle lane in the number 2 lane. And that's going to be at speed. So I see a pretty big potential problem there. That was one thing. And the other thing, to me, the crosswalks, if there are 2, I could see that would be okay. But if there's only going to be 1, I would recommend that it's the north crosswalk and not the south. Because for bicyclists, at least, they're going to be going, that's uphill. It's just going to be more convenient for them to only have to cross, if they're turning left, to go on to Santa Fe, as Mr. Wallace pointed out, being really the safest way. I would say the safe way. It's not safe for a bicyclist, in my opinion, to move across 2 or 3 lanes to get to the left turn going north on El Camino Real. So for maybe an experienced cyclist who thinks, well, he'd rather get in that left lane and make that left turn rather than, because he doesn't want to cross twice. It's quicker just to be able to cross once and then start biking up. So I would go with the north side if I'm only going to have 1 crossing.
Yes, this definitely did come to mind when we're working on this concept. One advantage of the south leg over the north leg was that the north leg would be in conflict with the free right. If we keep the crossing on the north leg, then the free right, southbound right turn, if a bicyclist is crossing, would be a concern of conflict, especially the fact that a cyclist would probably build up a little bit of a speed when they get to the end, going from east to west, and then the right turner vehicle southbound arrives. That was one concern that would kind of benefit southbound a little bit over the northbound, south leg crossing over the north leg. But no, your point, we did also consider that.
I think your point is a good one, too.
I definitely like the 2 lanes added to the westbound Santa Fe right there, the turning in, the extra turn
The last
lane.
option.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of room for it, and that just seems to make sense.
And again, this can be done in combination with the other option. Like we can say we like the road diet, but also we like the additional lane on Santa Fe.
Yeah, is it time for another motion? So what I heard was everybody's. I'm going to paraphrase, and then people can disagree. But I personally, what I heard was people like crossing on both sides of El Camino Real. I think there's a general agreement that traffic calming is a good idea at this particular intersection. I agree with everybody else. You know, people fly along there, and there's really no reason. And then the turn onto the 2 lanes on Santa Fe Boulevard was the third one. Probably what was maybe more debatable was the protected intersection. So maybe we leave that off the motion. The motion would be we support the idea of crossing on both sides, traffic calming, 2 lanes on Santa Fe Boulevard. Does anybody want to second that?
I don't know if it was in there. I don't think I heard it. What was the idea about road diet on El Camino?
Just that we like the idea of traffic calming, so that maybe a road diet that would be acceptable, but it may be something else. But at least the idea that we want to slow the traffic along there. Okay, I heard a second, so I guess we move on to the next.
Amanda, you want to repeat?
Sure. Did we want the road diet in the motion or no?
I heard just traffic calming.
Okay. So Commissioner Templin moved to recommend crossings on both sides of El Camino Real, traffic calming, and 2 lanes turning onto Santa Fe. Is that correct?
I think that's what we heard.
Okay. Do we need to vote on that one?
No, I think we decided to combine all of them together in the end. So we don't need, let's not complicate things. We don't need a motion and second right now because we need a motion and second all the way in the end for the item.
Okay,
But-
then we can go on to the
Yeah,
South
let's go
Coast
to the
Highway
third.
101 pedestrian crossing at
Yes.
Solana Beach.
So this one is, I guess, a little simpler. We did receive about 2-3 years ago a direction from council to consider a crossing at this location. This is the border of the 2 cities between us and Solana Beach. A very big number of pedestrians cross at this location, especially during the beach season, at a harbor park going toward the state beach. We did meet with the City of Solana Beach engineers multiple times. We hired a consultant. Both sides covered the cost of the consultant. Different alternatives were designed. The idea is to cross pedestrians from the end of the Arbor Park to the newly built sidewalk by City of Encinitas. 3 alternatives we have here. One is to keep the 2 lanes in each side and do just a rectangular rapid flashing beacon without doing a road diet. Another option is to do a road diet. This one obviously becomes 1 lane in each direction. The advantage of this one would be we'll have a lot more right-of-way. We'll be able to add additional bike lanes on each side adjacent to the existing cycle track. The crossing distance would be a lot shorter, still with the RFB. The last option is to implement a traffic signal. This one initially was designed as a pedestrian traffic signal like the Swami's crossing. We received input from City of Solana Beach that their residents and possibly their council, this was never officially reviewed by their council, but the concern was that if we build a traffic signal just like Swami's, it would have aesthetic impact for the residents in Solana Beach with the view of the ocean, because half of the year it would basically sit on green because there's nobody there to push the button. It would be just a signal that's green all the time, especially during the night. It would be just resting on green. Due to that reason, this third alternative, we're thinking about doing a signal, but not with long poles, tall posts and mast arms, but just with shorter 1A poles. These are the smaller poles that you've seen at intersections that only have a signal indicator on top of them, and then there's nothing else. We're introducing a median here. All of them, I guess, have a refuge area, but we're adding short signal poles here in both directions and an actual traffic signal. The advantage of this one would be this is an active traffic control device, so vehicles have to abide, have to follow, have to stop, compared to RFB, which is more of a passive traffic control. The first 2 options are RFBs, one with a road diet, one without, and the third one is a traffic signal. The concern with the third one, again, as mentioned, because of the fact that it would need a street light added to it, there might be some pushback from City of Solana Beach on the third alternatives. But again, this is not something that has been reviewed by their council formally. I'm open to questions, Chair, on this one.
We see no questions. Do we, or do we have one?
God. So again, these would be narrow. We would continue the current design where we have the narrow, quote unquote, narrow bollard wheel stop design, or?
This doesn't change. I guess the first one, alternative 1 and alternative 3, where there are 2 lanes in each direction, doesn't affect the layout as much. the bollards and wheel stops will remain where they're at. It's just introducing the crossing with the RFB. The second alternative, however, which includes a road diet, will have a lot of options introduced. We can add new bike lanes. We can have wider buffers. We can convert to a. This kind of touches on the fourth grant, which is a cycle track. We can, with a road diet, add a lot more to the road. We can add new bike lanes. We can have wider buffers. But with the first alternative, which 2 lanes in each direction remains, the layout of the cycle track and the road in general wouldn't change.
And from the discussion of this 2 weeks ago, I think you said you felt that the capacity of the 101 would be adequate if you had single lanes in each way, in each direction. Is that right?
Again, the traffic engineering numbers, I mean, we had this discussion earlier about the capacity of the road. What engineering guidelines dictate with the reality on the street? Like, I mean, you're familiar, you're all city residents. La Costa on paper is failing every single hour, but it's not. Like, a lot of hours during the day, the flow on La Costa is acceptable. Even with the stop signs, we have like 2 stop signs, one at Sheridan, one at Vulcan. But the volume of the average daily traffic on the road based on engineering guidelines says the road is failing. Encinitas Boulevard, as said, with the numbers right now, one segment I think is in failing or level of service E. But again, the flow of traffic, maybe 30 minutes during the day, 15 minutes during the day, you're at a congestion level where it's bothering the driver, but 90% of the times flow on Encinitas Boulevard is acceptable. With that in mind, the volume on 101 at this specific area, because of the fact that we don't have that many intersections creating conflicts, there aren't that many driveways other than the State Beach. It's not like we have businesses. There's not that many parking maneuvers. The volume, I think, is within like 18,000, 19,000, if I'm not mistaken. The road can carry. With 1 lane in each direction, I can, with my, I guess, experience, just say the road diet can work here. Because, again, because we don't have that many parking people coming out, going in. There are no businesses. There's no turning movements. The road can carry 18,000, 19,000 with 1 lane in each direction.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have any public comments on this?
On this specific item, 1? Christine Schindler.
Just very briefly. So I used to live in Solana Beach. I have a foot in each community in the bike walk groups. And just so you know, when the Coastal Rail Trail in Solana Beach ends at Ocean, and 15 years ago I was asking for them to put something similar to this in at Ocean because that's where people were crossing. And that's at the top of the hill. That never happened. It's a fail for my advocacy. Then they converted, they secured Harball, and they cleared it and converted it, and now it's this beautiful open space that's utilized, and then they put in the undercrossing, and now people are crossing further down the road, so which is at the bottom of the hill. So I'm totally in support of this. The only thing I want to let you know is that Solana Beach is going to extend their coastal rail trail. So now it's not going to end at Ocean. It's going to go to the border. And they are planning to do a road diet. So if they're doing a road diet, it would be good for us to do a road diet so that it's blending and meshing up. So I appreciate the effort of staff working on this. Very excited that the grant was successful, and I look forward to having a crossing here because people are doing it anyway, and it's very dangerous. And you know, I'm a little annoyed that 4 people can influence whether we put in something similar to the Swami's ped crossing. But I'm just happy if there's an RFB and a Z crossing. So thank you for your work on this.
Any discussion from the commissioners?
The fourth option is the rest of Coast Highway here, right?
Correct.
I would say we should just kind of take
Yeah.
that into consideration with this.
If you like, I can continue, or, okay. Yeah, the first one, as Commissioner Duncan mentioned, it's basically from the border of two cities north toward Cardiff State Beach. The idea is this one I'm not going to show you. There are like 20 different cross sections here. I'm not going to go over each cross section here. The idea is the grant language was for a walkway on the east side due to, I believe, 2 pedestrian collisions that we had in the history of the collision review. That this calls for a 5-footer walkway on the east side of the road. However, similar to the previous projects I mentioned, just by doing that, we get the option of modifying the rest of the road. So we have some flexibility with whatever we do with the rest of the road. Multiple options exist. If we keep the existing layout, meaning wheel stops and bollards and travel lanes as they are now, we just have to shrink basically everything and just add a 5-footer walkway on the east side of the road by the lagoon. Everything else will remain as is. It would be just tighter than what it is now with no major modification. We have the option of changing things. Road diet, if we do a road diet, pretty much sky's the limit with regards to what we can do with that road. We can add a 2-way cycle track similar to the northern area between Swami's and Chesterfield, where we have a 2-way cycle track, protected bikeway with bollards and wheel stops. We will have enough room for a bike lane and a buffer in each direction for both sides, so our different groups of cyclists would have their own bike lanes, a protected area and a unprotected regular bike lane with a buffer. We'll still have our narrow travel lanes. We will have walkways. We have the opportunity of by the dunes right in front of Los Olas, the parking protected area, the walkway, the DG path is a 4 or 5-footer now. A lot of times it's not enough for people who are jogging, who are running. We would have the option of, by the road diet, probably widening that walkway area, that DG path too. So there's a lot of opportunities that can come with the road diet option. We also have the option of, without the road diet, to make some modifications, convert the one-way in each one-way protected as it is now to a 2-way, basically eliminating bollards from the northbound side and just leaving them on the southbound side, convert the southbound to a 2-way cycle track, basically making it similar to what we have in the northern areas, and then introduce a new bike lane. There is enough room based on our preliminary evaluations. If we convert the existing layout to a 2-way cycle track, we will have enough to add maybe one additional bike lane for one direction. There will be enough room opened up to do that. So there are opportunities out there, a lot more with a road diet option, but even with the without a road diet option, there is a possibility of some conversions. Keep the layout as is, convert to a 2-way cycle track, and introduce a new bike lane. And I can show you probably.
And maybe just the one other difference I think I'm seeing is parking added on some versus not.
Where we have parking right now, the idea is not to lose it. So none of these alternatives recommend removing. One idea with the road diet is that we can convert it to diagonal parking and introduce a lot more parking spaces. That's also an option. This is the one I was talking about. If we convert the existing layout to a 2-way cycle track, we do have the option of adding 1 or 2 bike lanes. This one is the road diet with a bike lane in each direction and a diagonal parking space, which will increase parking capacity too.
And is the area in reference the non-red area?
Yes, the non-red area is the area that we don't have room for parking. Because currently, as you know, just by Las Olas, we have a stretch that has parking, and then before and after, we don't have parking. That's why for each alternative, we have two different cross-sections. The cross-section with parking and the cross-section without. I mean, the short story is like with the road diet, we can introduce everything. We can introduce more parking, we can introduce new bike lanes, we can convert to a two-way cycle track. With keeping the 2 lanes in each direction, no road diet, options would be a lot more limited.
Can I make a comment? Or Glenn? I'd really like to commend you on option 3. I think you've solved a lot of problems with that option. I think a road diet would be difficult from a political point of view. I don't think you get a road diet past the city council, but regardless, I think that this option 3 provides a lot of solutions, and I'll try to explain why I think that. So we'd have 6 foot, I don't have the cross section in front of me, but it'd be 6 foot bicycle lanes, which are quite good size. They're actually larger than we had prior to April of 2020. So that would be a positive in respect to what we had before. And when we're going north, no, actually, what this would also allow is by allowing the cycle track riders to have a 2-way, they're going to be protected in the area where we have our parallel parking by parked cars from moving traffic. And either to the north or south of that, they're going to also be protected with an additional buffer you've provided with a Class 2 cycle lane. So they're going to be pretty far away from any moving traffic. And I think that would allow us, at the same time we do this, to get rid of the wheel stops because they'd be unnecessary and have fewer bollards. We could do that at the same time, and people that want to be in that cycle track be there safely. I don't think they would have a problem with that. And then the other thing is very good, is that for the cycle track riders and for the families, and I think it'd be safe for families if the kids are good riders at this point, who wanted to go to Seaside Beach. When they leave, they'll be able to go right back. They won't have to, there's nothing to cross. They can get right back and cycle track and head north. That's a great solution. The only inconvenience is going to be crossing in Las Olas at the crosswalk there. But they're not trying to produce speed. They're on an outing, and the cycle track riders that have been at this meeting and repeatedly said that they're not trying to go as fast as the spandex people or whatever. So I don't think that's going to be a problem for them. And I think it'd be very difficult for you to run a bidirectional cycle track all the way past the bridge north of Cardiff State Beach. So there's one thing I would want to ask, well, actually one thing I want to ask and one thing to caution is that when the cycle track riders are turning left, coming out of Seaside Beach, that's going to be an issue. Let me think. Are they the ones that, there's going to be cross traffic that they're normally not, when they turn left, they might be all right, but there's going to be cross traffic at that intersection for the cars that are coming north on the 101, because they're going to be coming in, and there'll be, it's not the ones that are leaving Seaside Beach, but the ones that are coming from Solana Beach. So that's going to be cyclists, that those cars that are turning left, that are going northbound on 101, are not necessarily going to be expecting. And also for drivers who are leaving Seaside Beach, those drivers are not going to be expecting those northbound cyclists on the cycle track. So you'd probably want to have some, I don't know what it would be, some way to alert those drivers that they can anticipate cycle traffic that they might not otherwise expect.
For the northern phase, we did speed cushions and speed humps at these turn pockets for these opposite direction counterflow bicyclists approaching. We have a similar case right at the Swami's entrance to the Swami's parking lot. We have a similar situation.
Well, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
The one thing I wondered was, what did you do with median on this design? Is that going to be a problem for emergency vehicles? It didn't look to me like there was any median division. Will emergency vehicles have a place that they're going to be able to stop?
In this area, I don't believe we have a stripe median. It's just a double yellow.
So that would remain then, because it wasn't apparent to me from the cross.
Yeah, it would just converting basically a double to a single double yellow. Currently, we have 4 yellow lines.
Chief Gordon and his crew.
It's not going to affect the flow because, again, it's not like there's a two-way left turn lane there. There's not a two-way left turn lane.
Right. Well, I think, to me, this is a terrific solution. It solves a lot of problems. I think this will fly. There's also room, there's one more point that's really good about this solution is that for runners, the sidewalk is only 5 feet, right? But there's not going to be that many cyclists in that cycle track, and they're going to be going southbound. So the runners are going to be able to step off the sidewalk when there's pedestrians in their way, for the most part. And they're going to be able to see that there's good visibility there, so they're going to be able to anticipate pretty easily. I think this is a very good solution.
The only thing I'd like to clarify in case commissioners like your suggestion, the parking protected area, we would still need to keep the curbs, the wheel stops. The area that's not parking protected, we can just do bollards. Cars would have to park by a curb.
No, I understand.
Correct.
But hopefully a lot less bollards.
I mean, cars would have to, California code, they have to park by a curb.
They make a good visual cue, and that's the important thing here.
As long as a car cannot go into the cycle track when making a parking maneuver, because that's...
No, I was talking about outside of the parallel parking.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Outside of that, if we keep the bike lane, like the scenario you're looking at right now, this one does not need it. Again, if that's commission's direction, council's direction, this area doesn't.
No, I just meant even fewer bollards. A wheel block outside of the parallel parking disappear altogether, but fewer bollards.
Again, these would be like during the design. We'll talk about these. Yeah.
Right. That's excellent.
Okay, so I'm looking at Commissioner Templin to make our.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe Ron, I'm looking at you. Do you want to make a motion?
On just this section or for all 4?
Well, I would make a motion for this particular section, yeah.
Third and because we didn't wrap the third one.
That, with the caveats that I just described with the removal of wheel blocks, removal of
Use the microphone, please.
I'm sorry. I'm still getting used to that, Glenn. So, yes, I would make a motion that we support option 3 with the caveats that I mentioned, which would be to remove the wheel blocks north and south of the parallel parking area, decrease the number of bollards significantly so that they're a visual cue, so that they're not a hazard for the cyclists, because there would be room for cyclists if they needed to swerve for whatever reason. And I would also agree with Abe to solve that problem with the northbound cyclist traffic for the drivers that are exiting Seaside with a hump or a bump, whatever kind of speed table you'd be using there.
And I second.
Sorry to interrupt, but we do have speakers on this project. Or at least one. We have one speaker.
Speakers.
Anyone else? Two speakers. Christine Schindler and Sean Wallace.
So Christine Schindler, East Encinitas. So I'm having like a deja vu moment, and maybe I said this at council, but when I see this part of the program, two things come to mind. I would want to make sure that we're blending with whatever Solana Beach is doing so that we have some consistency. And where my mind goes is coastal rail trail. So at some point, we're going to be building a coastal rail trail segment, and why are we not talking about that? So I'd love the bike lanes to be restored. I think having a two-way cycle track and having some consistency with what's further north makes a lot of sense, but I just don't understand. I don't know, maybe it's me. I just don't understand if this is supposed to be adding PED facility on the east side, but instead we're going to just making the one on the west side larger. Like, I just want to talk about the next segment for the coastal rail trail, because that makes sense to me. So I'm a little confused by this all, but that's okay.
Sean Wallace. When it comes to bicycle safety in Encinitas, restoring the Class 2 bike lanes on this section of the 101 is the low-hanging fruit. When we think of the number of crashes and accidents, ambulances, surgeries, and deaths that would have been avoided had they been maintained 5 years ago, it's stunning to think of that number. And if we can do it using state money, all the better. If that's the case, I suggest we jump right on it. It's a win for cyclists. It's a win for I forget what the slower riders who now will have a lane for themselves. It's a win for the motorists who are not having to share a lane with cyclists. In fact, the law states that if there is a Class 2 bike lane, in most situations, the cyclists have to use that unless they need to come out of it for some reason. So I can guarantee that the cyclists at the moment are reluctantly having to use the number 2 lane will be in the Class 2 bike lane. So I encourage you to jump on and support this, this amendment. Thank you.
Does that complete the public comments?
Yes.
Is there a motion here?
I think Ron already made it, and I second it.
Okay, good.
Did we want the crosswalk one, though? We're kind of including that with this, right? Did you want to hear
Correct.
opinion on that? So if I'm hearing
This
that we're
doesn't
not...
need to, yeah, you can do separate motions. So I guess if this is what commission wants to bless, you have the option of, on the third one, to still convert to a road diet, convert to one lane, and go back up. Well, I guess we heard, I'm not yet 100%. If Solana Beach actually is doing a road diet, I haven't talked to anybody there. But if they are doing a road diet, we'll eventually, at the end, would have to convert into one lane in each direction. If that road diet happens sooner, so that when we get to that crossing, it's one lane in each direction, or if we keep it at 2 lanes, and then they would have to, because they cannot force a road diet on City of Encinitas. If they're doing a road diet, they would have to start at the border of the 2 cities and then go to 1 lane if we are not doing a road diet. So you have the option of recommending a road diet for the crossing, no matter what your decision on this one is. The only thing that I want to again reiterate is this is not a design. I don't want commission to feel like this is what exactly you will get. Because this is not engineering design. This is just a concept. Commission's recommendation would be we don't want to see a road diet. We do like the 2-way cycle track option. We do like to see additional bike lanes as much as we can fit, because not all of this we might not be able to fit everything in there. But the idea is we'd rather keep the number of lanes as is. We'd rather convert it to a 2-way cycle track, remove the bollards and wheel stops from the northbound side, and then try to push bike lanes in where it's not existing. That would be...
I'd like to add one thing, though. In the option, the first option of the fourth thing about the sidewalk pedestrian on the east side, kind of in line with, ultimately, if there is ever going to be a rail trail there, because I thought that was part of this whole initial thing is, as a cyclist riding northbound, people are forced to walk head-on into you in the bike path there if they're walking south on the east side of the road. So I would just like to see a sidewalk, whichever of these plans for this fourth plan.
I mean, that can be a combination of this one that Commissioner Middock liked, with converting the east side, the northbound one, to a walkway area.
Yeah.
Or it can be just an unmarked area that can be used by cyclists or pedestrians. We still have, we keep the Sharrow on the number 2 lane. Again, we're going deep into the design, but it can be, keep the Sharrow in the northbound side, leave a 5-6 footer edge area. Somebody can walk on it, somebody can ride on it. It would be an unmarked edge area per se. But then we'll add the southbound bike lane, that would be new. I mean, there will be options, but if we're not doing a road diet, our options would be a lot limited.
There's not much pedestrian traffic on the east side. Very, very little.
I Saturday rides often coming up that way, and I'd say about half the time there's a pedestrian that either has to hop off the bike lane or moves up there. They're there. There are people. I didn't think there would be as much, but there are.
And once we get into the design process, again, because of the fact that it is going to be a relatively long process, especially with this, I can see being the longest of them with the community outreach and the design process, we will know a lot more with the Solana Beach effort, what they're designing and how we can make sure that these kind of work together. We'll have ample time to review what they're doing and what the connection would be.
So what I'm hearing you say is we don't have to design it tonight. We're basically just giving you feedback. So what I'm hearing is we like option 3, but we also want a sidewalk on, what is that, the east side there. And the details of this are going to be worked out at some future point, but that's sort of the sense of the committee. And then in terms of a crosswalk, do we want to sort of add that here? Or, yeah, a crosswalk with either a light or an indicator? I personally prefer the green-red light there, but I don't know what other people feel about that. Any feedback?
I would oppose that. I just think it's a random spot to stop traffic entirely, and then the concern with the constant light there, red or green.
Okay.
For people who have to see it at night.
So then let's go with option 3, sidewalk on the east side, and then a crosswalk without a stop sign as a motion.
Crosswalk without a signal.
Without a signal, I'm sorry.
Keeping it 2 lanes in each direction, no road diet.
That's right.
For neither of the 2 projects.
Okay. That's a motion. Do we have a second?
Can we, let me ask a question on, Paul, on if we put a sidewalk on the east side, there's just not enough space.
We don't have to design it tonight, Ron. We're just providing feedback on what we would like. And then,
well, okay, that's just
you
going
know,
to be what we'd like.
the
but
devil is going
I
to be in the
understand.
details
Okay.
in the future.
Okay.
Okay, now, Amanda, you can read the motion and the second. This is now for the actual agenda item with all 4 of them.
Okay, but I do need to-
commissions, what was that?
Sorry.
If commissioners want to hear the whole thing from the beginning, you can read the whole thing, or if they just want to hear the last one.
And are we voting on the whole thing at once, so all 4 at once?
Well,
That's the
because it
only-
was one
so
agenda.
The only issue I would have, and sorry, I didn't quite understand the procedure there, is in the first one, I think everything was really good. We said just the idea that we're going to commission and saying we're adding wanting to add lanes on Encinitas Boulevard. That would, for me, that's just a non-starter. So I guess that means I'm voting no on everything when I agree with every other option that we've offered. So that's the only thing I think is a little weird about doing it like that.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Can we do it as 4 separate motions and then
I'm
one
fine
after
with
the
that.
other?
I'm fine with that. Again, hopefully we're procedurally not wrong, but basically breaking the item into 4. I do have a memory that council once did this with one item recently, right, Jill?
But we're not council, we're a commission, and
I would assume the procedural rules would be the same. So, yeah, let's break it because, yeah, I think like 3 or 4 meetings ago, council had a similar situation where there was a motion and a second on half of the agenda item, and then they did the same on the second half. So maybe we can do 4 separate motions and just carry on.
I agree. I think it's a little hard to swallow in one. So why don't we just do, well, I'm not the chairman. Glenn, why don't you go ahead?
So, Amanda, you want to read the first motion so commission can vote on?
Yep. Yes. So I have Commissioner Templin move to recommend a third, sorry, are we removing the third lane? We're keeping the third lane.
Keeping the third one.
Okay. Commissioner Templin moved to recommend a third lane, turn pockets, and narrow lanes, and that the section near the freeway require more study and special treatment due to congestion, and not to recommend bollards with narrow buffers. And a second by Commissioner Meddock. And I'll have to do it verbally. Patricia Trouth is absent. Glenn Johnson?
Yes.
Chris Duncan?
Yes.
James Gross? No. Ron Meddock?
Yes.
Paul Templin?
Yes.
And David Thiele?
No.
Okay. And then this is for El Camino Real and Santa Fe. I have Commissioner Templin move to recommend crossings on both sides of El Camino Real, traffic calming, and 2 lanes turning onto Santa Fe, with a second by Commissioner Duncan. Patricia Trouth is absent. Glenn Johnson?
Yes.
Chris Duncan?
Yes.
James Gross? Yes. Ron Meddock? Was that a yes? Paul Templin?
Yes.
And David Thiele?
Yes.
And then for the third, for Coast Highway 101 pedestrian crossing, I don't know that I got this all. Commissioner Meddock moved not to recommend a road diet and convert to a 2-way cycle track. Was there more?
Convert to a 2-way cycle track, add additional bike lanes.
Can you turn your microphone on, please?
My motion was to opt for option 3. And then there were certain caveats with that wheel blocks would be removed north and south of the parallel parking section.
This was for the third one or the 4? Option 3?
For the crossing walk, I think the
okay, I'm sorry.
motion was.
Yeah, but then I wasn't the person that moved on on the third.
You're
That was
right.
somebody else.
Sorry
I think
about that.
I think we did move on it. We said let's roll it into the 4th.
Correct. Yeah, we decided to piggyback those two together.
Okay. So we're saying move to recommend option 3 and include a sidewalk on the east side and include a crosswalk without a signal and no road diet. Does that sound right? Okay.
And then, Ron, you had some concerns about the bollards and the wheel stops as well.
Correct. As part of option 3, I suggested that, or my motion was that we remove the wheel blocks in the sections that are north and south of the parallel parking, and that we decrease the number of flexi-post bollards significantly so that they become a visual cue.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that is really a design. Doesn't change the layout per se for the purpose of going to council. Not to complicate things. It's okay to keep it in there, but we'll come back to you anyway with with regards to the number of bollards and wheelie stops.
Okay, so I kept it. Patricia Trouth is absent. Glenn Johnson,
Yes.
Chris Duncan,
Yes.
James Gross, Ron Meddock, Paul Templin,
Yes.
and David Thiele.
Yes.
Thanks.
I think we're done, right? All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. One suggestion, Chair. It's 8:28.
Yes.
We do need a motion to extend by another 30 minutes, 1 hour, whatever commission
Yes,
wants to do.
Before we do that, are there any public speakers on the roundabouts? There's one. Are there any public speakers on the commission work plan?
No. No.
Okay. Is there a motion to extend the meeting for an hour? So moved. Second?
So second.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch who the first was.
Ron moved and then I seconded.
Thank you. I'm going to have to do verbal again. Patricia Trouth is absent. Glenn Johnson,
Yes.
Chris Duncan,
Yes.
James Gross, Ron Meddock, Paul Templin,
Yes.
and David Thiele.
Oh. Okay. Next agenda item is roundabouts.
So we want to do both items, the roundabout and the work plan.
Yeah, I thought we were going to postpone that to August.
What? You
The
want to
roundabouts.
postpone the roundabouts?
To August, due to time, so we
Due
can
to
get
time.
to the
So
work
do the
plan.
do the work plan and then postpone the roundabouts until August. Is that a motion?
Yes.
Is there a second?
And then we also have a commissioner-initiated item too tonight.
We'll get to that when we get to it.
Okay.
Okay, so
Did you get Amanda, did you get a motion on continuing 7B?
Oh, sorry. We did get a motion and a second. Chair Patricia Trouth is absent. Glenn Johnson,
yes.
Chris Duncan,
Yes.
James Gross, Ron Meddock, Paul Templin,
Yes.
and David Thiele.
Yes.
Okay, so 7C, in the interest of time, we did go through, as you recall, 3 meetings ago, various different projects by the commission. We ranked them, commissioners voted on each, we scored them, we prioritized them. We came back to commission. One meeting, we only had, I think, 4 members. We had a quorum, but commission decided to continue this because there was only, I think, 4 members there at that meeting. The next meeting, we ran out of time, and now 3 or 4 months after, 3 months after, I think we're back. These are the projects that commission voted on. There were some that didn't get any votes. There was one, I believe, that had only like 1 or 2 that had only 1 vote, so we dropped them out. But these are the ones that commission wanted to see on the final work plan. I did add the number of votes they had, and I also ranked them. You can take the same table to council, to the joint meeting as your work plan, or you can do even a shorter list if you like, or you can just say, we'll submit this to council, and then we'll just get to however many we get to. If we don't get to finish it, we don't get to finish it. But this is the list that commission discussed in length and voted on, as you recall, 3 months ago.
I've got sort of an embarrassing amendment here. I don't really completely understand item number 3 around the circulation element. What the description there? What exactly are we proposing? I think you added the verbiage. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, the idea at that point was we did have this, if I recall correctly, this idea from council that we do like the idea of sending our bicyclists and pedestrians to lower classification roads, meaning bikers, instead of using Encinitas Boulevard, for example, go use parallel roads that have lower volume, lower speed. Similar with pedestrians, basically trying to find an opportunity to ask our residents to conduct their active transportation, bicycling and pedestrian on not on major arterials or higher level, faster roads. How it can be achieved, I don't know. But again, this was the idea.
And I think that's a great idea. But I was wondering, are there other elements of the circulation plan that the Mobility Commission could review? I know it was sort of a general. When I heard the council talk about it, I didn't hear them say it in this sort of specificity.
I mean, our mobility element is being presented to council very soon, but that's an effort that's done by our development services, by our planners. We have been involved, and they did a presentation to the commission. I don't know if it was, I don't remember the last time. It was recent. I'm not sure if you and Commissioner Medoc were on the commission when they did the presentation. But it was presented to commission twice during the process. It's at very, very late stages. They're pretty much done, if that's what and it's going to council soon.
Okay, so your sense is then the only part of the mobility plan that we could really look at would be the element that you've specified here.
This is what I just talked about before this, about like moving our active transportation out of our major corridors, arterials,
Right.
lower speed. That's not even a component of our mobility element. This is a totally separate thing that one or two of our council members brought it up, I think at the joint meeting, and then commissioners decided to include that in the work plan. It's
Okay.
not a piece of the mobility element update that our development services department is doing.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
I was going to add one thing. I would add a vote to number 10, education. I think Commissioner Keeley was the sole vote there, and I'd like to add my vote because I think it's extremely important, especially for the young people.
Okay.
So can we just, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of feedback on this plan. We've talked about it a couple of times. I'll just move to take this as our work plan when we talk to City Council in a couple of weeks.
that sounds good. Is there a second? Second. Okay, I'll vote on it.
Sorry, who's the second?
Okay. 5-0. That's our work plan. Hooray.
Commissioner Medoc, did you vote? Very good.
Next item on the agenda is Okay.
The traffic engineer updates on the major projects going on in the city. Quick updates, our lead pedestrian interval project is ongoing. Our controllers, all of our signal controllers in the city, well, not all, with the exception of 2 intersections, all of the controllers have been replaced, upgraded to new controllers that would allow implementing lead pedestrian interval at all of our intersections. Our bike emergency project is still ongoing. We have El Camino Real is being repaired as we speak. Saxony Road repairs are done. Village Parkway repairs should happen by the end of the month. And then hopefully Slurry on all 3 roads either by the end of this month or in July. After the Slurry project comes the chicanes on Saxony Road that have arrived. We do have them in stock. It's just we have to finish the Slurry before installing the chicanes on Saxony Road. But the roadway repair is ongoing right now. With the permit parking program, as you know, we did go to council. Last month, we did receive new directions from the city council with regards to revising the revision. The consultant is working on it. We thought we'd be able to bring it to commission this month. We haven't been able to finish it, the revisions. It will come to commission in August the final version before going to council. So you'll see it again at our August meeting, the new permit parking program of the city. I'll open to questions, Chair.
Any comments on this?
I do. Abe, thanks for that. And in terms of your bike emergency enhancements, does that involve 101 as well? North of Leucadia?
I don't think we had any piece of the project there.
Any other comments? So we're done with this item?
Yes. And these are just updates. They don't need any kind of motion. And our commission's log, I don't think there is anything new on the log. Yeah, there's nothing new on the log. If there are any questions about anything else, I can provide updates to the commission. And with the new work plan, the log, I guess, would disappear in the future meetings after council blesses our work plan. The log was for items that commission and the staff would basically come together and put ideas about what to do in the future. But with the work plan, we'll know what our next year's plan would be, so there wouldn't be any. I guess the work plan can be a parking lot for future work plan items. Like when ideas come up, we'll put them on the log and then we'll handle them at the next year's work plan. And then our development projects update. This is our summary of what's going on in the city with regards to land development projects. If there are any questions about any of these projects, I can provide information if I have. If I don't, I'll gather the information and send to the commission.
And we do have a public comment on this item as well.
Well, let's have that.
We have Lisa Provenzano.
Hi, this is on 845 Santa Fe Drive. The developers, I believe there were 10 people from them, came to the planning committee on Thursday last week. The planning committee did express concern about the safety. They're only having one exit out of the 51-unit development onto Santa Fe Road. Their original plan, I believe, was to go on Minerva also, but they met with that community and came to an agreement of some sort. So it is now only one exit out of there, and actually out of the whole thing, we're only getting 5 low-income houses out of that, and I believe they're duplexes. It's right across the street from SDA. We haven't even fixed what went wrong on Santa Fe Road. It's just a disaster. And the former mayor, who part of the reason he is the former mayor, when people complained about the different features of Santa Fe Road, said, well, if it doesn't work out, it's a lesson learned. I hope it was a lesson learned, because you're our hope. The planning committee is told how to vote. They don't even need to do any, the city attorney tells them, the state says they have to do it. But this particular developer said he's asked for 4 concessions, but he's asked for 10 waivers. So I don't know, you would see the details of how far the setbacks, concessions are given for the setbacks. I just can't imagine on that road any more people coming in and out of there. And I really can't tell, because of that bike lane that goes all the way through, how they would come out of the development, and if they wanted to go back, because they were going north on the freeway, but they're coming out onto Santa Fe Road, I'm not sure what that would look like. And the bus stop that's there would have to be moved, so I don't know. There seems to be a lot of problems, a lot of safety problems. Plus, the trucks, the construction trucks, where would they go? Remember where they were? It was an obstacle course. And there's too much on there. How can we get more safety concessions for us? They can just come in and do that. So do you work with, well, you can't answer me, but closer with the planning committee and just everybody talk to each other, because you guys are here because you're really concerned about the safety, and so are we. Thanks.
We're done with that, right?
Yes.
So we're on to Commissioner Corner. Let's go. There's a commissioner-initiated item from Commissioner Paul Turpin regarding a moratorium on use of bollards and wheel stops for bicycle safety in Encinitas.
Should I intro it now, Glenn?
What?
Should I intro the topic right now, or what do we do?
You want to present the topic?
Sure. So, wow. I got a feeling this isn't the last time we're going to talk about wheel stops and bollards. But we've already spent a lot of time today talking about, what is it, 8:45 and counting here. But from my own perspective here, if I can stand up straight while I'm saying this, I think especially Ron has really raised some serious concerns about wheel stops and bollards on narrow sections of bike lanes. And I really feel we should put a moratorium on wheel stops and bollards for narrow section bike lanes until we really understand the safety implications of it better. I think we've already seen some data showing that the bollards are basically a hazard to the bicyclists themselves. So that's the motion, and we'll leave it to folks to talk about it.
I have maybe a couple questions. One is, it sounds like there's still the investigation going on, but do we think wheel stops would have prevented the bicycle fatality on Encinitas Boulevard on January 1st?
I don't know. I know that that's probably something we can look at. Certainly, we've seen a lot of evidence showing that the wheel stops cause accidents along the 101.
Yep. Yeah, just curious.
So yeah, just to follow up on that, when I say moratorium, I mean, it's really that. I mean, if we reach a point later on in our understanding of the safety issues and the moratorium is no longer appropriate, then certainly we would stop it. But based on what I've seen so far, I feel it's appropriate to do it now.
Abe, as a traffic engineer, do you believe the wheel stops would have prevented a death like what happened on January 1st with, as far as we know, the car moving into the bike lane?
I mean, that one, I don't know if it was a right hook or it entered the bike lane in advance of the intersection. I'm not, Christy, can you, oh, she left. Yeah, I don't have the exact, if the collision happened from what I remember, from what I recall, the vehicle entered the bike lane in advance of the intersection and run over the bicyclist. Is that what you know about?
Yeah.
And again, we're just talking about stuff that we don't know really.
Yeah, that's what.
But if it was, I mean, again, if it's the case of a vehicle entering a bicycle facility, running over a cyclist, obviously wheel stop would prevent it.
Yeah. Okay. And then the only other thing I'd say on the bollards is have we looked at any studies around increasingly cars have ADAS, or basically driver assistance. Often those are camera-based systems that work off visual cues, bollards being a visual cue. Have we looked at any data around that, how bollards work with ADAS systems and prevent people from entering lanes based on the visual cues that they give cameras?
Yeah, I think I think it's an open issue. There's for sure more information that we can talk about in terms of whether they make sense or not. I guess from my perspective, we've already seen a lot of evidence that they're dangerous to bicyclists. Maybe you can make an argument or present data that cars with higher levels of sensor technology are going to be okay. I guess I would say there's going to be a lot of cars without that sensor technology around for a long time. I know none of my cars have that capability, and I would imagine it's going to be years before most of the cars are going to have those kind of capabilities.
Cool, thanks.
Amanda, do we have any public speakers on this?
We do. We have Natalie Satoon, who wants to register her support of the recommended action. And then we have Steve Linke with time donations by Sean Wallace and Natalie Satoon.
I have a PowerPoint. Good evening again, Steve Linke. I'm a retired research scientist and former Carlsbad traffic commissioner. Next slide. So I assisted on the before-after study of the Cardiff cycle track with Commissioner Maddock, and we showed that there was a 50% increase in bike crashes after conversion to the cycle track. I won't go into the details because you've heard those several times before, I think. Next slide. So only official state CCRS and EMS dispatch data were included in the study, so it's a very sound before-after study. But crowdsourced crash list that's coordinated by Serge Isikoff also contains a number, dozens of legitimate observations as well. Many of them overlap with the CCRS and EMS data, but many of them don't. The key point I want to make on this slide is that the published studies that you see on the safety of separated bike lanes only count vehicle bike crashes like the CCRS database does, not the ones in the red box. So solo bicycle crashes with the infrastructure, solo or bicycle crashing into other bicyclists or pedestrians, those don't get counted in almost all cases. Next slide, please. All right, so there's a lot of published safety data on on these separated bike lanes. I'll just call them SBLs from now on. But the results have been very inconsistent. The Federal Highway Administration and NACDO are now marketing a 2023 study done by Dixon et al. As providing definitive proof of safety. And they say it's a 53% reduction in vehicle bike crashes after the plastic bollards are installed. So my point of this presentation mostly is to delve into that study. Next slide, please. So this is the cover page of the study, and it's unclear whether it has undergone any peer review. It seems like the Federal Highway Administration just published it, sponsored it, and published it on their website. Next slide, please. So there are different types of studies. A before-after study is really the gold standard because you're comparing the same street before and after you do an intervention. And this is good because every street is very unique, has different numbers of driveways and signal and intersections and all kinds of differences. And so if you do a before-after study where the only change is you're installing the SBL, then you can be confident that you're not going to have too many confounding factors, or you have to control for a lot less confounding factors. This study, though, while they set out to do a before-after study, they downgraded it to a cross-sectional study where they're just looking at sort of a random set of facilities and then trying to do a statistical analysis to account for all these confounding variables. And I've taken a lot of quotes directly out of the paper. And on this one, quote, "The team could not locate a data set that included the date of implementation for each site of the SBL, so they elected to use a cross-sectional analysis instead." Next slide, please. All right, SBLs tend to increase non-vehicle involved bicycle crashes, as I mentioned earlier. So one example is street cleaning challenges mean that there's more debris in those lanes. Cyclists run into debris, could get injured. Those typically don't get recorded in a study like this. There's more fixed objects there now to hit, like the bollards and the wheel stops. They can hit other bicyclists because you have many bicyclists traveling at different speeds. All bicyclists now are in that lane. Some of them are recreational bicyclists that might be going 5 to 10. There might be some vehicular cyclists that are going 10 to 15. You might have e-bikers and they're going 20, 22 miles an hour, and in a narrow bike lane, they can't pass each other. They can run into each other. Less room to maneuver. Again, the Federal Highway Administration study wouldn't account for these. It only accounts for vehicle-bicycle crashes. Next slide, please. All right, and here's an example of how SBLs can increase risks at intersections. So in this example, which I took from Santa Fe Drive, the yellow arrows are right-turning cars with rows of parked cars blocking their view of the bikes in the SBLs, shown with the orange arrows, which significantly increases right hook crash risks. Next slide, please. However, the study had to exclude all intersection crashes in order to reach their safety conclusion. So even though these are in corridors, which include both segments and intersections between those segments, they had to throw out all the intersections. They couldn't analyze it as a full corridor. Initially, quote, "Initially the research team hoped to develop safety models for segments and intersections, but their attempts to model intersections and/or entire corridors were unsuccessful. These two options did not yield statistically viable results." Next slide, please. The study also had to guess at the bike counts. The quote from the study is, "Ideally, this assessment should have included known bicycle exposure volumes. Ultimately, though, the bicycle exposure variable had to be estimated." Next slide, please. And even ignoring the fact that the study excluded the vast majority of bike crashes that occur, by only studying mid-block crashes with vehicles, the study still had very inconsistent results between cities. Of the 5 cities studied, only 3 had sufficient data, and only one of those achieved statistical significance. The other 2 only were able to contribute by adding into that one, which was San Francisco. And the city with the most data, Seattle, did not show a strong trend toward safety of SBLs. Next slide, please. And there are other inconsistencies with past studies. So this study, the ultimate conclusion that you see in the marketing material from the Federal Highway Administration is that bollards alone, the plastic bollards, reduce crashes by up to 53%. But they also found, as I mentioned in a previous talk this evening, that when they add other elements like wheel stops, that reduction actually is reduced. So they're reverting. So adding wheel stops makes them more dangerous when you add them to the bollards. However, some previous studies show that bollards alone have no impact on safety whatsoever, and in fact, they increase crashes. So there's a lot of inconsistencies between the studies. But again, if you believe this study that's being promoted a lot now, the 53% reduction, then you certainly wouldn't want to put wheel stops in because they would make it worse. All right, last slide. Next slide. So despite those marketing claims, I would view, in my experience, that this is more of an exploratory study. They did the best they could with the data they had, but it's being way overblown by the Federal Highway Administration and NACTO as far as being some sort of definitive study due to all these limitations I just described to you. And in our industry, we call it level of evidence, but the level of evidence provided by this is not sufficient to make these like nationwide policy changes. So I would suggest to you that SPL still should be considered experimental and only done with great caution, and I would strongly urge you to vote in favor of Commissioner Templin's request for a moratorium on these. Thank you.
Any discussion on this, commissioners?
I'd be interested where we could get more data, but the only thing I would take issue with, I think, is that study that you cited from 2023, the Federal Highway Administration has been looking at this since 2021, and they do have other studies showing this SPL data being safer, not just that 2023 study. And I think that link to that webpage shows those other studies too. I don't know. I'm just saying, I think there are more studies that show that, not just they've been doing it since 2021, right?
So back in 2015, actually, the Federal Highway Administration produced a bikeway.
Sorry to interrupt, but we actually can't do the back and forth.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
All right.
It's a good presentation. I just think there is other data and there's other studies out there on why it's considered proven safety measures by the Federal Highway Administration. It's not just that study. I think that's what you were highlighting.
I'd like to respond to that. I'm sorry.
Sure,
I
yeah.
didn't want to cut you.
No, absolutely. I just want to make sure
that.
if that's clear, that there are other studies and that those studies are why that's been designated as a proven counter safety measure, not just the 2023 study.
So I'd like to respond to that. I don't have the in-depth knowledge that Mr. Linke has, but I have looked at critiques of those studies. I haven't read every study. There was a study in Holland. There was a study in Stockholm. There was a study, I'm not sure, I think there was also one in Copenhagen. And I've read critiques of those studies, and I would recommend that if you're interested in this topic, there's a gentleman by the name, a professor from Harvard in the Urban Transportation Department by the name of Paul Shimmick. He's written a whole series of articles addressing the studies that, I think the studies that you're referring to, because he's addressed at least 5 studies. And remarkably to me is that every one of those studies was markedly flawed in one way, in very similar ways to the Dixon study that Mr. Linke just talked about. So my conclusion, reading those critiques at least, and I haven't read all the studies, I mean, there's only so much time in the day, but is that there was a lot of marketing taking place without basis.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information out there, and I guess depending on how passionately you feel about whether we need bollards and wheel stops or not, you can go on either side. But I think we've got, and Steve didn't really talk about it, but kind of the gold standard is some sort of longitudinal study like what we have done on the 101, where we see this huge signal or impact from the putting the bollards in. So we can go back and forth, I guess, with dueling studies, but I think we have some local data that's pretty compelling to at least put a moratorium in place until we can get more alignment on this issue.
I guess that's part of my question of like, what defines this moratorium? Because if we've got this grant coming that requires some element of this, right? We were just talking about projects there that are going to require bollards and things. So I'm just not sure what this would achieve or what we're going to get with this.
Well, I think that's a great question, and probably the motion needs to be modified in some way to accommodate moratorium on narrow bicycle lanes with bollards and wheel stops. I would certainly be open to that.
Yeah, my personal experience here on Leucadia Boulevard, the bollards and the green paint seem to be a significant improvement. We had one fatal accident between Quail Gardens Drive and Saxony, I think, or slightly west of that, where driver right hooked a bicycle and caused a fatality. But that's before bollards were put in, and the bollards have prevented that kind of thing. I look particularly at the Stater Brothers entrances, where I travel there a lot, and the bike lanes and the green paint and the bollards indicate clearly to drivers and bicyclists who belongs where, and it seems safer that way, in my opinion.
Glenn, I don't think that's correct. Those bollards were there. If you're talking about Dr. Worley, Dr. Jennings Worley, the gentleman who was killed. He was in the cycle track, and because the cycle track was there, the cars were moved to his left, and that is why the right hook occurred. Had the cycle track not been there, the car would have been the truck, would have been the van. I think a truck would have been behind him, so that there are a couple of different reasons. I'm not going to go into all of them now, but that cycle track was there. He was in it, and in my opinion, that crash would not have occurred and that death would not have occurred of that actually very famous scientist if that track had not been there.
Yeah, I guess I'm seeing that on near Stater Brothers especially, the cycles are moved to the left of the right-hand turning lane of cars at the most popular intersection for turning right into that shopping center. And it seems like there's a clear division between places where cars should be and bicycles would be with the bollards. On wheel stops, they probably cause more accidents than I'd believe, but it's hard to say because so many of those are operator error. You go far to the left and you hit the wheel and go over. Those are single bicycle serious accidents caused by wheel stops, and I don't know that they're reported very well.
Possibly propose, we've talked about wheel stops. I think they're two different things, and the grant opportunities don't involve wheel stops, right? They're just bollards?
There's no mention of a specific design element, it just says separated bikeways or protected bike lanes. We can use any vertical element. As was brought up, I'm even looking into the possibility of just using audibles as an experiment if that's what council wants as a separation, if it's something acceptable by Caltrans. Because it's not in the standards. We don't have currently any kind of a audible striping as any kind of a traffic control device.
Okay. I mean, maybe as an alternative, just for this to possibly move forward, is to remove bollards and just do the moratorium on wheel stops as a compromise. But two, to find out, what would be the next step if we were to vote and support this? Goes to the council, gets added?
Yeah, as other recommendations from commission, it's an advisory. So the staff recommendations in different areas for different projects would remain the same. We'll just present staff recommendation with commission's position. If we have a design that would go to council, let's say in August, that has bollards, we would say commission's position is they do not like bollards or they do not like wheel stops. That moratorium, it's, again, as an advisory moratorium, it can go to council with a letter of a chair. Chair can sign on behalf of the commission that the majority of my commission would like to put a moratorium on wheel stops in the city. And then when we go to council with a design that includes a wheel stop or bollard, if that's the staff recommendation, council will consider that. Or council might go one step further and put that moratorium as a direction to staff. And then obviously we will not include any of those in the design later on. But at this time, the utility of such motion would be a letter to council, and then when we take anything to commission and council, knowing that at the commission doesn't like it, and when we go to council, we'll say, council, commission's recommendation is not to do wheel stops, or because it's a narrow buffer or it's a wide buffer, I mean, depending on what commission's position is. But the staff recommendation will remain the same.
So it's advisory, basically. We're just, giving the advice. I would say, as I mentioned earlier, that basically a moratorium on wheel stops and bollards on narrow bike lanes. And that, I think, would allow us to still consider bollards on the in situations where we had an adequate buffer. So I'll make the motion unless people want to discuss this more.
Could
and
I
then
ask another question? So,
Sure.
I mean, bollards are used all over, right? They're used in a lot of, I've seen us propose them on very narrow corners just for pedestrians where there's no sidewalks. And so the bollards are used, again, just as a visual cue to say sometimes there are people here. Are we saying like a moratorium on all of that?
No, I'm just suggesting this or proposing this only for bicycle safety.
But on a designated, so like those bollards that people ask for around tight corners, again, for like where there's no sidewalks, you'll see them sometimes on Encinitas streets. Like, would we put a moratorium on that when people ask for
It
that?
depends on whether it affects bicycle safety or not.
Yeah, I don't know. They could, I guess. But it's not.
I mean, were you referring to cycle tracks, Paul, in your motion?
I'm referring to bicycle routes or bicycle paths where bollards and wheel stops are used. So I'm
for
trying to
instance,
keep
we put
this as narrow as possible.
Schools put up cones during the high traffic hours when the kids need to cross. That's effectively a bollard. It could get in the way of a bicyclist. Are we talking about like that too?
I think you can interpret it however you want. I mean, the motion is really around bike paths, so,
Yeah,
know.
it's just a danger. I mean, again, that's where I would want to know. Like if we're talking about we can't put up cones at Pawlackie Elementary because that would be a moratorium on using anything that would potentially indicate that we need to be safer here. Well, I'm just asking though. We're not saying that?
Well, probably the installation of bollards.
I can't speak for Paul, but I think he's talking about putting permanent flexoposts into the asphalt in order to create a cycle track. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. And I think Abe answered the question partly when we were discussing the SAFE grant, how we could get around that condition that was being placed on the SAFE grant. Abe had some good ideas about how we could design it, get the grant, get the money, and still have something that's safe for cyclists. That's not the kind of cycle track we have, say, on South Beach 101. Nobody's talking about cones that you drag out and put there and then take away. I mean, come on. I mean, people bicycle, they see those things all the time. They go around. They're not being forced into it. and they have an option to go somewhere else, that's different than if you're going down a 45-mile, or now it's 35-mile-an-hour highway, and your only option is to be in the cycle track that you consider dangerous, or go in the number 2 lane and have what happened to me, which is Toyota Tundra, get really pissed off and cut me off about that far from my front wheel because he didn't think I should be there. And frankly, I don't blame him. In a way, I don't appreciate the behavior. I don't blame him for being a little bit angry and pissed because he's not thinking of. He's saying to himself, "Well, you have a lane. What are you doing over here?" Well, I understand that, but he's not a bicyclist. He hasn't never had these problems. He hasn't had to deal with that. So I don't want to put your words in your mouth, Paul, but that's how I interpreted your motion.
I mean, in the interest of time to simplify things, Commission will still see anything of that level of importance if we're building a cycle track, if we're building a protected facility, if we're adding bollards, protected intersections. There's no way that something goes to council without Commission seeing a project of that scale, if we're talking about bollards and wheel stops. And then Commission can make its position clear to staff and council upon review. Because with or without this moratorium tonight, no matter what the position of the commission would be, staff would design it based on staff recommendations. So it's not like if the moratorium goes through, staff, if they feel that this design would be safer for the city, would not include it. With that said, wouldn't it be simpler for the commission when they actually see the design to make their motion with regards to the acceptance or recommendation or not recommendation of those wheel stops and bollards at the time of reviewing the project? I'm trying to see why we need to guess what's going to happen in the future or create some sort of a blanket approval or denial or moratorium on something that hasn't happened to complicate things. You will see that, like, if I'm doing, like these 4 grants that we talked about, the wheel stops and bollards or whatever we're doing for those protected facilities, you will see them at the 30% design, you'll see them at the 60% design. Before they go to council for design amenity, you would have to put your recommendation on them. And if you, at that point, say, we don't like these bollards, Abe is bringing it to you, council, without our recommendation, then council will see that there's a design there, that the bollards are not supported by the commission. I think that's a lot simpler than trying to find a narrative that's like a blanket moratorium or a guided moratorium that's acceptable by everybody or the majority of the commission. I mean, you're welcome to make a motion and see if there's votes, but I think it's a little complicated from what I'm hearing. But again, it's your item. I'm just trying to
Sure.
simplify
Yeah, I
things.
mean, I guess from my perspective, Abe, as we've talked about multiple times before, you know, the commission's here just to sort of speak for the public and to raise our concerns about different design elements that the city is implementing. And so this item is really about advising only, obviously, the city that we see these bollards and wheel stops as being dangerous and require further study before we implement them in the future. Obviously, from your perspective, you'll do what you think is safest and then request feedback from the commission at that point. So, yeah, whatever we do tonight doesn't really hinder anybody. We're just advising the council and the city that we see this as being a danger and something they should really try and avoid in the future.
Yeah, then in that case, again, the motion doesn't need to be a moratorium. The motion would be for chair to draft a letter. We can provide guidelines on what that letter should include for council, and then chair would draft a letter, or it can be a subcommittee, can draft a letter, bring it to commission in August, and commission will review the letter, and then it would be signed by chair and sent to council.
So, yeah, so I think
carries.
the motion's already been raised, and I think Ron seconded it, so maybe we should just vote.
Do you have amended the motion?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the motion.
I think it's the original motion moratorium on the use of bollards and wheel stops for bicycle safety in Encinitas. I guess you'd have to open up the section. The item itself, there was some discussion about a letter by the chair. Can you open that up? I don't have it with me right now.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you what I think I have, and then
Okay.
I had a motion to write a letter to City Council from the Commission to recommend that a moratorium on the use of wheel stops on narrow bicycle lanes and the use of bollards be put into place.
Well, the use of bollards on narrow bicycle lanes and wheel stops for bicycle safety.
And wheel stops for bicycle safety.
That's a motion. Does it have a second? The chair would like to propose an amendment to the motion to remove the wheel stops from the discussion. Is there a second?
I'd second that.
Okay, any discussion of this?
So it would be a motion just with about bollards and not talking about wheel stops. I'd be interested in why you're proposing that.
No, I'm sorry. My thought was a moratorium on the wheel stops.
Yes.
Right.
My thought is the same.
Yeah, not bollards.
Remove bollards from the,
Statement.
Don't we just vote on that? Isn't that the next step? Or do we want to
okay,
discuss it?
can we vote on removing bollards? No, pardon. Yeah, removing bollards from the letter. Do we have a second on that?
The
Yeah.
The original motion was from whom?
Original motion was from Commissioner Templin, second was from Commissioner Meddock.
Okay.
Now there is a substitute motion that's recommend a moratorium to City Council for using wheel stops on narrow buffers. No mention of bollards. And that one was seconded by Commissioner Duncan.
And how does this work, so rules of order? Do we need to
Second
vote on the
first.
first one first and the second?
Second first.
The second first, okay.
Second first and then first. Second first
Okay.
and then second.
Okay,
So can we
we'll
vote
do
on the
them
second?
verbally. Second first. Chair Patricia Trouth is absent. Glenn Johnson,
Yes.
Chris Duncan,
Yes.
James Gross, Ron Meddock, Paul Templin,
No.
and David Thiele.
No.
And then the second, Patricia Trouth is absent. Glenn Johnson?
What?
On this, the second motion.
On the motion to,
On the motion as it is.
as it is. I'll vote no.
Chris Duncan?
No.
James Gross? Ron Meddock? Paul Templin?
Yes.
And David Thiele.
No.
Those don't pass.
Well, I just want to thank everybody because that's the first time I've proposed a motion and, well, getting knocked down the first time is okay. I'll take my training wheels off next time. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, are we all done with the agenda?
We have one more motion to go here.
What's up? Yes, is there a motion to adjourn? Yes. Seconded? Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Wasn't too bad. I thought maybe this would last longer. I thought maybe we were going to go for 10 o'clock there.
Oh, man. Good night, all.
Good night. Good job, Glenn. Good job.
I'm still learning how to use this.
You just got to hit people with this thing here. No, it's sort of intimidating, all the different, the process you have to follow and